Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Konoha. Travel through Ninja World and open treasure chests. Chapter 1. Name: Asakawa Shiroha. Age: 7 years old. Chakra: 100 100ths. Ninjutsu value: 10. Physical skill value: 15. Illusion value: 10. Skills: Shuriken throwing technique LV5 and 1174 1600ths. Introductory sword technique LV2 and 137 200ths. System initialization progress 99. Looking at his attribute column, Baimingyu sighed silently. It has been a full year since I traveled to the world of Naruto. When he just traveled through time a year ago, he was ecstatic, thinking that he could show off his talents in the world of Naruto, fight in a big way, punch Uchiha, kick Jinchuriki, marry and fight Kagaya, and finally climb all the way to the world of Naruto. The pinnacle of the Junin world. However, these unrealistic ideas were quickly dashed by the cold water of reality. He does carry a standard system for time travelers, but until now, he doesn't know how to activate this system. In 1 year, as he watched the progress bar move from 1 to 99, Baimingyu's mood also changed from the initial expectation to the current despair of life. This broken system must have crashed, right? Just when I was feeling angry, a whip was swung from the side and hit the ground with a snap, followed by an angry voice. What are you still doing? Go and work, I'll give you the salary. Are you lazy, a bunch of sneaky brats? Baimingyu had a cold face and was in an extremely bad mood. Originally, even if there was no system, he could become a ninja through hard work, and then rely on his foresight of Naruto's plot to gain a good status in this world. However, the place he traveled to was not Konoha, or even the 5 major countries. Any ninja village in the country, but a small village in the country of grass. It was a small country with average military strength, but wars were frequent. From time to time, bandits would loot villages. Considering his own life, Baimingyu planned to leave here after saving enough money and find a way to go to Konoha village. Before that, we can only endure it for a while. After pushing the last box of goods into the warehouse, Baimingyu wiped the sweat from his forehead and hurried home hungrily. The so-called home is actually just a shabby house, a legacy left by cheap parents whom he has never met before. This body is named Asakawa Shiroha. Both his parents were killed in the frequent wars in the land of grass. Fortunately, he left some savings before leaving, which allowed him to avoid the dilemma of sleeping on the street. However, the meager savings were only enough to barely fill his stomach, so Baimingyu had to work around to slowly scrape together the travel expenses to Konoha. Arrive home. Baimingyu first rolled up his sleeves, untied the 2 black iron rings on his wrists, and threw them on the table. Then he walked to the compartment inside, took off his clothes that were wet with sweat, and poured a bucket of hot water on himself. On the body. The hoops made of pig iron, each weighing 2 kilograms, are the tools he uses for weight-bearing exercises. Without the bloodline of a descendant of the 6 paths, he cannot inherit the blood inheritance limits of major families. He can only use this method to train himself. Judging from the results, his physical skills value was still 9 points a year, and now it has increased to 15 points. It still had some effects. After washing off the smell of sweat from his body, Baimingyu had just put on clean clothes when there was a gentle knock on the door. Is Brother Baiyu here? A timid voice came from outside the door. Baimingyu, who was wiping his hair, responded, casually tied his half-long black hair behind his head, and then opened the door. A little girl with red hair was standing at the door. She looked about 3 or 4 years old, but she was a little thin. She was holding a bowl of steaming food in her hand. What's the matter, Xiao Shonglin? Brother Baiyu, this is the fish soup newly cooked by my mother. It is very delicious. My mother said I would give you a bowl to try. That's it. Then thank Aunt Mei for me. Baimingyu smiled, rubbed the little girl's head, and messed up Xiangling's red hair. That's right, this little girl is the Xiang Phosphorus who appeared in the original work, a descendant of the Uzumaki clan, and one of the members of the Eagle team that Urzu will pull together in the future. However, the current Xianglin is just a little girl under 3 years old. She came to the country of grass with her mother Uzumaki Miya more than a year ago, and settled down with the help of his cheap parents, so the 2 families became neighbors. But not long after that, the predecessor's parents were killed by the rain ninja while they were out shopping, leaving Asakawa Hakua as a child, so Uzumaki Miya in turn began to take care of him. Even though the situation at home was not good, she still frequently sent some fresh meals and fruits. It was precisely because of the appearance of Shang Phosphorus that Bai Mingyu confirmed the specific era he was in. Konoha 51 years. It was not long after the Third Ninja War that Uchiha Obito ran to Konoha village and released the Nine Tails, causing both the 4th Hokage and Kushina to die in the battle. In the future, the 12 Konoha strongmen are still just a bunch of freshmen, little child. After confirming this, Bai Mingyu was slightly disappointed but also relieved. I was disappointed because I didn't have the opportunity to see the famous Golden Flash, as well as other original characters who died in the Second and Third Ninja War. However, I missed the time when the war was the most intense. For him, who is a kind of plug-in, this is something to be thankful for. After seeing off Xiao Shang Phosphorus, Bai Mingyu returned to the table with the fish soup and sat down. As soon as he opened the package, a thick aroma spread out around him. He opened his chopsticks and was about to reach for the soup bowl when a light flashed in his mind. System initialization completed. Current progress 100, loading. Host identity detection completed. Command instruction confirmation. Congratulations to the host for opening the Super Treasure Box system and receiving the Novice Welfare Treasure Box X1. At the same time, a red box suddenly appeared on the table, emitting a hazy red halo. This is. Bai Mingyu was stunned. It took half a minute for him to recover from his shock. He looked at the treasure box in front of him with some disbelief and the map that appeared in his mind. This is obviously a map of Naruto's world. Konoha village in the country of fire, Sand Hidden village in the country of wind, and the nameless village in the country of grass where he is now. In addition to the labeling of the place names of each village, what is even more eye-catching is the pile of colorful light spots that are constantly flashing. One of the light green light spots is near this village, while the others are scattered throughout the map. Every corner. Treasure chest. Bai Mingyu seemed to understand something. He turned to look at the small red box next to him and tentatively stretched out his hand to touch it. The moment the lid of the treasure chest was opened, the dazzling red light made Bai Mingyu squint his eyes subconsciously, but soon, the light dissipated and turned into several light groups that slowly solidified and appeared in front of him. The first thing was a stack of drawings filled with strange patterns that looked like ghostly drawing symbols. There were almost a dozen of them, which were the most common detonating symbols in Naruto. Strictly speaking, the detonating talisman is not a ninja tool. Even ordinary people who cannot refine chakra can use it normally as long as they know how to use it. Moreover, if purchased separately, the price is not cheap, costing almost several thousand yuan per piece. It's much more expensive than a kunai. The currency of Naruto world is silver standard, with auxiliary currency yuan. 1 silver tael is 10 yuan, and the purchasing power of silver taels is approximately equal to R yuan. The second item was a bottle of unknown green liquid. When his fingers touched it, Bai Mingyu had already obtained the detailed information of this bottle of liquid. Primary Cell Activation Potion. After taking it, it can stimulate the proliferation and strengthening of cells in the body, and permanently improve the personal physique by 10 points. It is only effective the first time it is taken. As for the third thing, congratulations to the host for obtaining the 6th type of navy shave. Do you want to learn it immediately? 10 minutes later, Bai Mingyu came to a remote grove behind his residence. He looked around to make sure there was no one around, then took a deep breath and sank down. Bang bang. In just an instant, Bai Mingyu's feet suddenly stepped on the road several times. The next moment, his figure suddenly disappeared from the place and turned into an afterimage that appeared 4 or 5 meters away. The sudden appearance of the figure and the sound of the wind frightened a wild dog nearby to bark. Bai Mingyu, on the other hand, turned around in astonishment and looked at the position where he was standing before, his heart churning. Sure enough, it was shaved. A high-speed movement technique from One Piece. The principle is to rely on the reaction force of stepping on the ground more than 10 times instantly to produce explosive high-speed movement. In terms of the effect of the move, it is similar to the teleportation technique in Naruto, but it does not belong to the category of ninjutsu. Instead, it is similar to Metkai and the 4th Raikage, who rely on physical skills to achieve the effect of high-speed movement. Now it's just a level 1 shaver, and the moving distance is only 4 or 5 meters. But if you continue to practice and improve your proficiency to a higher level, it will be possible to travel more than 10 meters or even further in one step. It seems that this broken system is finally of some use. He moved his ankles, and a bright color gradually gathered in his eyes. Right now we only have shave, but if we can use other skills in the 6th marine style, such as moon steps, orashi kicks, finger spears and even devil fruits, and use them in the world of Naruto, what will happen? This treasure box system may be the basis for his foothold in this world. The next morning, Bai Mingyu was awakened by the chirping of birds on the top of the tree, rubbed his eyes, and hurried to the place where he was working. As soon as he entered the door, the tall and burly boss Aberdeen cursed, "What time did you come here? Is the salary paid to you every month for free? Hurry up and move this batch of goods to me within an hour. Getting in the car delayed your trip, let's see how I deal with you." Bai Mingyu gritted his teeth, suppressed his dissatisfaction, and moved the boxes from the warehouse to the carriage with several older helpers. Soon, with a shout from the carriage driver, the caravan slowly set foot on the carriage. Distance. The place where he worked was a caravan in the country of grass. The country of grass has frequent wars all year round, which is not a good thing for ordinary people. However, some businessmen have taken a fancy to the business opportunities and make money by selling drinks, even weapons such as swords and ninja tools in various towns. One return can produce several times the price difference. Of course, the risk of doing this kind of business is also very high, because there are many bandits and bandits running around in the kingdom of grass. If you are not careful, you will be targeted by them and become a prey. Today's batch of goods will be sent to another town dozens of kilometers away for sale. Not long after the convoy left the town, the weather turned cloudy and rainy. Bai Mingyu huddled on the carriage at the back of the caravan, hugging his body tightly with his arms, his teeth chattering in the cold wind. Why did you forget to pick up some clothes when you came out in the morning? If it keeps raining, you might freeze halfway. While Bai Mingyu secretly cursed himself for not remembering, he looked out through the airy door curtain and saw a misty rain curtain behind the carriage. There seemed to be a sound of horse hooves mixed in with the sound of rain, approaching quickly from a distance. Suddenly, a heavy coat was handed over from behind. Looking back, the middle-aged guard uncle in the same car touched his head and smiled honestly. "Put it on, don't catch a cold. My son is about the same age as you, but I'm not as brave as you to dare to run outside alone." As if afraid that he wouldn't believe it, the middle-aged uncle took out a photo from his armor and held it carefully in his hand. In the photo, a father and son are hugging each other, smiling brightly. "Thank you, uncle." The other party was out of goodwill, and Bai Mingyu thanked him politely. But the middle-aged uncle's action of taking out the photo made his heart skip a beat, and he felt like something bad was about to happen. Suddenly, the carriage jolted. Bai Mingyu didn't sit firmly, and almost half of his body was thrown out of the carriage. Fortunately, the middle-aged man behind him pulled him in time to prevent him from falling. He raised his head and looked through the rain curtain, vaguely hearing the sound of horse hooves mixed in with the sound of rain, approaching quickly from a distance. Wait for the sound of horse hooves. Bai Mingyu seemed to realize something. The next moment, he saw a group of bandits wearing raincoats appearing on the horizon behind them, galloping towards them. Their ferocious faces were looming in the rain curtain, and in the blink of an eye they were gone. After catching up with the slowly advancing caravan, they all took out their sabers from their bodies. Without saying a single unnecessary word, a bright blade of light flashed through the air. What the hell did these people come from? It's the bandits nearby who are attacking. Quote. The screams and bloody light appeared almost at the same time. What's going on? Where did these people come from? It's the bandits nearby who are attacking us. Tell the escort team that there is an enemy attack. Help! Exclamations and screams rang out one after another in the caravan. The carriages stopped one after another. The bandits behind them had rushed into the caravan with murderous intent, waving their long knives to kill them. Although the caravan's guards had quickly counterattacked, they were caught off guard and the defense line was broken through before they could even organize themselves. There was no way they could stop this group of ferocious bandits. Corpses fell to the ground one after another, and the bright red blood mixed with the rain, quickly turning the ground red. The bright red scene is shocking. Bai Mingyu came to his senses after a brief period of shock. Although he had long heard about caravans being burned, killed, and plundered by bandits on their way out. He never expected that he would be killed by himself the first time he left the village. Encountered, this luck is also bad. Seeing the guards fall down one by one, the middle-aged uncle pulled out his sword, grabbed Bai Mingyu, and jumped out of the car with great strides. Quickly, run to the woods ahead. As he spoke, the entire caravan fell into complete chaos. Even Anbin, the owner of the caravan, was beheaded by a strong horse thief. His fat body rolled heavily from the carriage and he died with his eyes open. When Bai Mingyu knew he wasn't being polite, he glanced at the middle-aged man with a complicated look, and then ran quickly into the woods. After only 2 steps, a bandit spotted him with sharp eyes and rushed over with a ferocious smile. Suffer death. The blade came through the air with the sound of wind. Feeling the threat of death, Bai Mingyu's pupils suddenly widened, but the middle-aged uncle burst out with a roar and stood up to meet him. Thief, if you want to kill someone, get through me first. The next moment, blood suddenly appeared. The bandit's sword not only broke the middle-aged uncle's sword, but also dissembled him, splitting him in half from the neck down. The bright red blood spattered out and splashed all over Bai Mingyu's face. Giggle. The middle-aged uncle stared at the bandit, his throat moved, and he fell on his back. The scarlet scene in front of him made Bai Mingyu's mind go blank, and he even forgot to escape. The bandit did not hesitate at all. After killing the middle-aged uncle with one knife, he struck at Bai Mingyu with a grin. At this moment, Bai Mingyu suddenly moved. Reacting completely subconsciously, he picked up a short knife on the ground and used the skill he just learned yesterday. Navy 6 shave. The figure flashed. Where is he? The bandit who rushed over felt his eyes blurred. The child who was about to be killed by his knife suddenly disappeared. The next moment, a thin figure appeared behind him like a ghost, accompanied by a warm breathing sound. The cold tip of the knife was already pressed against his neck, and then he pushed forward hard. A series of movements were almost done in one go. The short knife pierced the main artery in the bandit's neck with unusual precision, and warm blood splashed out like a fountain. Puff. The bandit stared at Bai Mingyu with wide eyes. A huge bloody hole was stabbed in his neck. Before he could finish a sentence, he fell on his back. After struggling twice, he lost his voice. I killed someone. The bright red scene in front of him made him tremble all over, and the hand holding the knife trembled slightly, but the other bandits quickly noticed what was happening here. A muscular man with his upper body exposed suddenly roared and rushed over on horseback. Kid, you killed him. Before he could answer, the big man struck at his face with an axe. Go to hell, I want you to pay with your life. What happened suddenly just now? The big man didn't see clearly how Bai Mingyu killed the bandit. When he rushed over, he saw the figure in front of him flash again, and Bai Mingyu, who was standing in front of the horse's hooves just now, instantly appeared on the left. The short knife was slashed hard against the horse's hoof, and then he took advantage of the horse's fall to slap several things hard on the big man. In order to achieve this step, Bai Mingyu's shoulder was also scratched by the big man's sharp axe, and blood flowed profusely. But then, the big man stumbled and fell to the ground. Before he could get up, a huge fire suddenly burst out from his body. With a loud bang, countless smoke, dust and leaves rushed towards him in all directions. Detonator. At that moment, Bai Mingyu put the detonating talisman on the inner side of the muscular man's calf. The power of the detonating talisman spread and immediately blew the guy into a puddle of flesh. Taking advantage of the smoke from the explosion, Bai Mingyu rushed into the woods and ran for the road. Escape. When his life was at stake, Bai Mingyu desperately squeezed his body's potential and ran for more than 10 minutes at a stretch. He slowly stopped until he could no longer hear the pursuer's footsteps. He stumbled on his feet and fell into a slippery pit. His whole body was immediately covered with dirty muddy water. Ahem, it really hurts. The dog bandits are really cruel. Bai Mingyu covered his shoulders. The wound opened by the axe had caused him to lose a lot of blood. His eyes turned black. What was worse was that the drizzle in the sky was still falling. If it continued like this, even if he didn't lose blood, he would still be alive. If he dies, I'm afraid he will also die here due to various inflammations caused by his injuries. Let's find a place to take shelter from the rain first. Bai Mingyu bit his lip hard, using the severe pain to clear his mind, and struggled to get up. I was about to see if there was a tree hole nearby that could provide shelter from the rain. Suddenly, my eyes fell on the bushes not far away, and I saw a hazy dark green halo emanating from it, as if there was something hidden inside. Same as the back. This is. Bai Mingyu stirred subconsciously, as if he had thought of something. He limped over while covering his wound, and used a short knife to push aside the bushes. Hidden in the grass was a dark green bronze box. Bronze treasure chest. Bai Mingyu was stunned at first, and then smiled bitterly. He was injured, and it was raining continuously in the sky. In this situation, unless there was a palm immortal technique in this treasure box, he might not be able to survive today. But this possibility is really slim. Taking a deep breath, Bai Mingyu put his hand on the lid of the box. I muttered some words of blessing from various gods and Buddhas in my heart, then opened the box, and saw a belt in my hand. The material seemed to be steel, and it felt quite heavy. Congratulations to the host for opening the bronze treasure chest and obtaining Taigu Lion King. The Lion King, the belt type Taigu. By turning yourself into a half animal, your physical abilities are greatly improved. Your sense of smell is also strengthened and you can search for enemies. The secret is, the lion is immortal, which improves your own resilience, even if you have hands and feet. Even if your eyes are cut off or blinded, you can stop the bleeding and reattach them on your own. The recovery effect will be better if you improve your half-animal transformation and combine it with the cross-tail of the Taigu. It's actually an imperial weapon. Bai Mingyu's pupils shrank slightly. Of course he knew about the imperial gear. It was a special piece of equipment that came from the eyes of the Sister Slayer. It was said that the founding emperor of the empire spent huge financial and material resources to produce 48 irreproducible weapons. Each piece of imperial gear was tools have their own special functions. For example, Murasama with red eyes has the ability to kill with one strike. Anyone struck by the blade will be quickly infected with poison from the wound and die. The performance of the Lion King is focused on improving physical ability and recovery. If the performance in this area is the same as what I know, then. Bai Mingyu looked at it and tied the belt around his body. After only 10 seconds, I felt a faint warmth flow from my belly and slowly spread throughout my body. Whether it was the wounds on the shoulders or the various wounds left by scratches and collisions with branches and shrubs while running for their lives, they all healed quickly and at a speed visible to the naked eye in just a few minutes. The newly formed flesh buds rubbed against each other, causing Bai Mingyu to break into a cold sweat. However, after the pain passed, an unprecedented sense of physical strength flooded into his body. The legendary Taigu is truly extraordinary. Just. Bai Mingyu reached out and touched the top of his head. To be precise, he touched the position of his ears. While the Lion King's healing effect was taking effect, his appearance seemed to have also undergone some changes. His ears turned into soft cat ears, and the nails on his hands became extremely sharp. The palms with clear joints seemed to contain amazing gripping strength. Has the ability to transform into a half animal. Bai Mingyu tried to twitch his ears like a cat for a few times. The sounds of birds, wind, and rustling leaves all around him were all very clear. Looking at the past with a pair of feline-shaped vertical pupils, no matter whether it was the shaking of the grass nearby, or the scene of a silkworm chrysalis slowly breaking out of its shell 100 meters away, all are shown in detail. Suddenly, a burst of noisy footsteps appeared in the distance, accompanied by vague voices, which seemed to come from a very far away place. This kid can really run. He's obviously injured and bleeding, but he can still escape so far. Huh, no matter how far you run, you're still dead. He actually killed 2 of our brothers. When I catch him, I won't skin him with my own hands. Look, there's blood in the grass, it's this way. Amidst the noise, 2 or 3 bandit figures walked through the trees. When they raised their heads, they happened to meet Bai Mingyu's eyes, and they were stunned for a moment. A smile slowly appeared on Bai Mingyu's face. I have persevered to catch up here. It just so happens that I have something to ask you. The leading bandit turned cold and said ferociously, "What a good boy, you still have the guts to stay here, I'll kill him now." The leading bandit drew out his saber and slashed at him with a loud shout. However, before the blade fell, a hand stretched out to hold it. The force coming from that hand was like an iron pincer. The bandit used a sucking force. He couldn't break free with all his strength, and his ugly face turned red. It's so good. If you have to be so violent, do you really think I don't dare to kill someone? Bai Mingyu squinted his eyes, his pupils shrank, and the scene in his eyes seemed to be in slow motion. With a snap, he broke the saber in half with his hands, and threw the broken blade to the ground. The bandit, the expression on his face became extremely frightened. One last time, answer my question or die. Pat pat. The sound of raindrops echoed in the forest. It had just rained, and the air became extremely fresh. Some birds flew out of their nests and chirped high in the trees. Boss Anbin's caravan has been completely wiped out. Carriages were parked in the middle of the road in a mess. All the belongings inside had been looted by bandits. There were cold corpses lying on the ground. Some people were even chopped into pieces with axes, and their arms were cut into pieces. His legs were scattered on the ground, his body and head were in different places, and his death was extremely miserable. Although it has been washed away by rain, the clear smell of blood still lingers in the surrounding air. Suddenly, a figure rushed out of the woods, leapt more than 2 meters high in the air like a strong lion, and landed on the roof of one of the carriages, making a heavy muffled sound. Standing on the carriage, he quickly glanced at the surrounding scene. Bai Mingyu frowned, feeling vaguely queasy. Human life is like a piece of grass. Should we say that this is the real Naruto world? Looking around, he found the figure of the middle-aged guard uncle among the corpses. Bai Mingyu jumped up to him. He first took a few breaths, and then took out a photo of father and son from the other person's arms. The photo was stained with blood. Soaked. I should have buried you, but time is running out now, so I can only wrong you first. If I see your son, I will help you take good care of him. After saying that, Bai Mingyu stood up, took one last look at the middle-aged uncle's body, turned around and ran away along the way he came. At this moment, fires have broken out in many parts of the village. The corpses of civilians fell in a pool of blood, no longer breathing. In the small village, the yellow land was dyed red with blood, which was shocking as far as the eye could see. Boss, almost all the valuable things in the village are here. There are a few people who dared to resist, but we killed them all. Do you want to bring the women in the village with you? A group of bandits gathered in the open area at the entrance of the village, more or less holding some bags in their hands filled with looted property. A few bandits were still carrying a few disheveled women on their shoulders, with smiles on their faces, and it was clear what they were thinking. The bandit leader looked at everyone coldly, snorted and said, "Stop talking nonsense, take away all the valuable things, pick a few beautiful women to take with you, and leave quickly, in case you are attacked by the group from the country of grass. If the ninja comes, we will be in trouble." While they were talking, another woman was dragged out of the house, followed by a gray-haired old man, who was the village chief. The old village chief dragged the bandit's arm and begged. When the latter kicked him impatiently, he suddenly shouted, "Please, don't take my daughter away. I can tell you a big story. Secret." Before the bandit could respond, the old man shouted to himself, "In our village, there lives a woman from the Uzumaki clan. Her blood has special healing power. No matter how injured you are, just sucking her blood will heal you. Can recover quickly." Hearing this, the expressions of the group of bandits changed one after another. The bandit leader immediately stopped his men's actions and asked, "Where is that woman?" Following the direction of the old man's finger, several bandits rushed to Shang Lian's house, kicked open the door hard, and then swarmed in, quickly pulling Shang Lian and Uzumaki Miya out of the house. "Is this woman from the Uzumaki clan? Her red hair is exactly like the rumors." The bandit leader turned around, glanced at the old village chief, and coldly snorted, "You are no longer useful, kill me." As the sword slashed down, blood spattered everywhere. The old village chief's eyes widened and he fell into a pool of blood. However, the bandits quickly took Shangling and her daughter to the entrance of the village, tied them up with other women and threw them on the back of a horse, and prepared to leave. At this moment, a bright cold light passed by. Like a bolt of lightning that shot through the air, it passed through a distance of more than 10 meters in the blink of an eye, and pierced the chest of the bandit who was holding the fragrant phosphorus. There was a thump in the latter's throat, and before he could react, he jumped from the horseback. He fell down and died on the spot. The sudden change shocked the bandits and turned their heads to look in the direction of the village entrance. On the path at the entrance of the village, Bai Mingyu panted slightly and walked towards the village step by step. Although after a long journey, his physical strength had been somewhat depleted, but seeing the tragic scene of rivers of blood in the village, his anger was immediately palpable. "Brother Baiyu," Shang Liao cried out, immediately attracting everyone's attention. The bandit leader frowned at Bai Mingyu and hissed, "Boy, who are you? You dare to kill my people in front of me? Sincerely, are you looking for death? Of course we are here to take your dogs' lives." Before he finished speaking, Bai Mingyu stepped on his foot and disappeared like a ghost. Then he appeared in front of a tall and burly bandit and kicked him hard. Pong! As soon as the wind blew, the bandit turned around and was kicked away. His huge body rolled on the ground several times before hitting the wall of a house. He opened his mouth and spit out a mouthful of blood. All the bandits looked at Bai Mingyu with wide eyes, shocked. The next moment, Bai Mingyu's figure disappeared again. It's like being in a deserted place among the crowd. Every time he appears, a cloud of blood will be splashed out. The blood comes from both the bandits and Bai Mingyu himself. Although his physical fitness has been greatly improved in his semi-animal state, after all, he is unable to defeat four hands with two fists. Facing the oncoming swords, he still has many wounds on his body. Finally, Bai Mingyu once again grabbed the weapon of a bandit on the opposite side and cut the latter in half. When he raised his head again after being covered in blood, he saw that the corpses of bandits were already lying around him, and only the last bandit leader was left in front of him. The bandit leader looked around and found that he was the only one standing around. He stepped back with a look of extreme horror on his face. Don't kill me. Please, I'll pay any price." Bai Mingyu looked at him coldly and slowly raised the long knife in his hand. Shua! The bandit subconsciously raised his machete to block it. Suddenly, the long knife in Bai Mingyu's hand seemed to have been chopped too many times and could no longer withstand the impact of more force. It suddenly broke under this collision. The bandit leader took the opportunity to hit Bai Mingyu's shoulder with his machete, almost splitting him in half from the side. "Haha, you are dead. Even if you die, I will have someone to support you." The bandit leader looked ecstatic and laughed hysterically. Stimulated by the severe pain, Bai Mingyu's pupils suddenly shrank into lines, and then he stretched out his right hand and pierced the bandit leader's chest with his sharp claws. Both of them fell on their backs at the same time. "I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I didn't intend to die with you." Bai Mingyu stood up staggeringly, endured the pain, pulled out the machete on his shoulder, and threw it aside. Under the bandit's disbelieving gaze, the blood flow at the wound gradually solidified, and the huge wound slowly healed. Suddenly, Bai Mingyu felt dizzy, as if his body had been hollowed out, and he almost fell to the ground, and the wound healing effect also stopped abruptly. This is warning. The host's physical strength is less than 5, please replenish it immediately, otherwise your life will be in danger. A red reminder suddenly appeared in my mind. The next moment, Bai Mingyu fell to the ground on his back. I don't know how long it took. Bai Mingyu gradually regained consciousness and felt a salty and warm liquid pouring into his mouth. He choked and coughed a few times. When he opened his eyes, he saw two red-haired faces, one large and one small, looking at each other with concern. "Hold yourself. Aunt Shangphosphorus Beauty, you're awake." Uzumaki Miya showed a gentle smile and retracted the arm that was placed on Bai Mingyu's mouth. A fresh tooth mark was clearly visible on her wrist. "This is, you just lost too much blood and passed out. The blood of our Uzumaki clan has the ability to quickly recover from injuries, so I'm sorry for feeding you something without your permission." Mizu Uzumaki explained. Her tone seemed a bit difficult to explain. "So what I just drank was Uzumaki Miya's blood?" Bai Mingyu's expression was a little subtle. But he had known about the abilities of Shang Phosphorus and his daughter for a long time, so he was not surprised at this moment, not to mention that it was indeed the other party who saved his life with blood. He thanked her and stood up with his hands on the ground. Recalling the situation just now, it seems that the Lion King's ability to heal wounds is not unlimited, but requires a corresponding amount of physical strength to complete. In addition, to maintain the half-animal state with astonishing physical abilities, the consumption is naturally extremely huge. In the past, it was precisely because of exhaustion of physical strength that the wound healing effect would come to an abrupt end. "Is there anything edible there?" Under the stunned gazes of the mother and daughter, Bai Mingyu stuffed a pound of rice into his belly, and then wolfed down a whole roasted lamb before he felt a little bit full of food in his belly. Feeling of fullness. After regaining his strength, the Lion King's half-animal state appears again. No wonder in the original work of Zanmei, each person can only use one taigu. It seems that it puts a lot of burden on the body. You should pay attention to controlling the time next time you use it. Bai Mingyu roughly understood the working principle of the Lion King and put down the bowl and chopsticks. The bandits have been slaughtered, and what lies ahead is a very real problem. The village has been looted by them, and a large number of houses have been burned down in the fire, including the houses of Bai Mingyu's family and the Uzumaki family. Although the damage was not too serious and could be rebuilt with some more time, the words that the old village chief took the initiative to say to the bandits in order to survive when the bandits were looting cannot but be forgotten. Mother and daughter care. So, you are planning to move from here. In front of the dilapidated house, Bai Mingyu looked at the red-haired mother and daughter in front of him. Yes, once the secret that Xiongling and I have the blood of the Uzumaki clan spreads out, it will quickly attract the attention of others and even bring disastrous consequences. For the sake of this child, I can only take her away from here. Mizu Uzumaki touched the little head of Xiong Phosphorus next to her and bowed towards Bai Mingyu. Thank you very much to you and your parents for taking care of our mother and daughter for so long. We will never forget this kindness. If we have another chance to meet again in the future, Xianglian and I will try our best to repay him. Wait a minute, where are you going after you leave this village? After hearing Bai Mingyu's words, Uzumaki Miya was stunned for a moment, and said with a forced smile, I haven't thought about it yet. Maybe it's a village in the country of grass, even if it's a little remote, as long as the phosphorus can grow healthily, it doesn't matter what else happens. Bai Mingyu's heart sank. Others may not know it, but he who has read the original work of Naruto, how could he not know what happened to Xiongling when he was a child? If nothing happens, once the mother and daughter move away from here, it will be the beginning of a nightmare. From then on, he was reduced to being used by Grass Ninja as a mobile blood pack and treatment tool, living a life without dignity like an animal. Even Uzumaki Miya will be sucked out of all the blood in her body, and will eventually die of exhaustion, and then Karen will continue to repeat her mother's experience. Thinking of this, Bai Mingyu made up his mind. Go to Konoha. If Auntie, you want to find a place for Konoha to grow up healthily, there is no place more suitable than Konoha. Moreover, I heard that Konoha has been friends with the Uzumaki clan for generations. When you get there, your treatment will always be better than in the grass. The country is better. Konoha. A glimmer of longing flashed in the eyes of the mother and daughter, but soon dimmed. No, Konoha village is in the heart of the land of fire. Do you know how many villages we have to pass through from here to Konoha village? And the town. There are wars everywhere right now. Even if we leave here, we can't go far. Bai Mingyu smiled, turned around, picked up the packed package, and carried it on his back. Then let's go together. The decision to go to Konoha was not a sudden one. Bai Mingyu had this idea as early as when he opened the first item from the novice welfare treasure box. With the treasure box system, as long as he continues to grow, his future is destined to be bright. How can he just sit in a small place like the country of grass and wait to die? When leaving here, it is natural to go to Konoha, the most powerful among the 5 major countries. In addition, there is another reason that drove Bai Mingyu to make this decision. 1, 2, 3 treasure chests distributed in Konoha village. There are actually 3. It seems that this trip to Konoha is really a must. A Taigu Lion King will give him a qualitative leap in strength. If he can use more powerful things, such as Murasama, the Arashi kick and finger gun in the 6 styles, or even those various devil fruits, he will be able to use them again. What does it look like? Thinking of this, Bai Mingyu's eyes became hot. With the help of the horses left behind by the dead bandits, Bai Mingyu and Xiangling's mother and daughter drove for 2 or 3 days, and finally arrived at Konoha village in the country of fire in the evening. In front of the tall iron gate at the entrance of the village, several people registered and then entered the village one after another. Now is the peaceful era after the end of the 3 war. Although Konoha has just lost the 4th Hokage and the 9-tailed Jinchuriki in the 9 Tails Rebellion, and the legendary 3 ninjas Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru have also left one after another, but the overall strength is still the leading ninja village among the 5 major countries. Driven by its strong military strength, the village has become increasingly prosperous, with many foreign caravans and tourists coming in and out every day. In this environment, the chunin guarding the gate are also very loose. As long as they are not the kind of enemy ninja who looks particularly vicious, ordinary people will basically not be blocked when they come in and out. After entering the village, you will see a prosperous scene. It was the first time for Shang Phosphorus and her daughter to come to such a place, and they were astonished and overwhelmed by the scene in front of them. Bai Mingyu also looked around, feeling a little stunned. He always felt that the technology tree in Naruto was quite strange. Call it backward. All kinds of radio communication and projection equipment are readily available. Even laptop computers will be available in a few years. As for Uncle Snake's genetic engineering and Banya's cell culture technology, the technological content is even more unknown. A few steps ahead of the American emperor. But when it comes to being advanced, that doesn't seem to be the case. Some places are still in a state of complete poverty, with transportation basically relying on walking and communication basically relying on shouting. For example, the small village in the country of grass where my predecessor lived was just like the Chinese countryside in the 1940s and 1950s. It was a large village with few buildings above 3 floors. As for Konoha, it's a different story. Various tall buildings are lined up in rows. Although it is not as densely populated as modern Earth, but from the perspective of the world of Naruto, it can be regarded as an international metropolis. The people coming and going are all filled with relaxed smiles. Passing through several streets, we arrived in front of the Hokage building, the landmark building of Konoha village. After being informed by the chunin guarding the building, after waiting for a while, Bai Mingyu and Xiangling's mother and daughter were finally brought into the Hokage's office. Across a desk, I met the legendary third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen. This third-generation Hokage, who is already 60 or 70 years old and can be said to be an antique in the ninja world, already looks very old, with deep wrinkles on his forehead and patches of age spots on his face. However, the momentum revealed inadvertently is breathtaking. He is worthy of being a generation of ninja heroes who defeated the 5 major ninja villages in the past. Quote, quote. The third Hokage crossed his hands and held a pipe in his mouth. He looked at the 3 of them in silence for a while and then said slowly, I heard a report from the ninja that several of you who claim to be the Uzumaki clan came here from the neighboring country of grass. Quote. To be precise, it's the 2 of them. Bai Mingyu corrected him. He wanted to travel through time and become a descendant of the Uzumaki, but since he didn't have that red hair, he was destined to be unable to unlock the bloodline, so he could only despair. Well, this red hair, strong chakra and vitality are indeed almost exactly the same as Kushina back then. The third Hokage quickly confirmed the identities of Koso and Uzumaki Miya. I remember when I heard that the Uzumaki kingdom was being besieged and exterminated, Konoha originally wanted to send people to support it. However, because the war in the ninja world was stalemate, no manpower could be spared for a while, so they watched helplessly as their allies, the Uzumaki clan, perished. I didn't expect to let you go through this. It's our fault on Konoha's part to cause so much pain, I'm sorry. The specific time of the Uzumaki clan's demise is not detailed in the original work. But judging from the time when Kushina came to Konoha, it should be a year between the Second Ninja War and the Third Ninja War. At that time, the war was in full swing. Konoha village was busy fighting with several other major countries and had no time to think about it. It was understandable that it could not free up manpower to support the Uzumaki clan. And Uzumaki Miya and Kaoru were a little flattered. After all, the person speaking was the Hokage. The number 1 person in the 5 great ninja villages actually apologized to them in person, which would be enough to brag about for a lifetime. The third Hokage lamented for a while, and then called an Anbu wearing a ninja mask, go and arrange the residence of these guests. Let's arrange a residence in the East Street area. I remember that there should be other places in that area. There are a lot of empty houses, so make some for them. Then he said to Uzumaki Miya, Miya, you have come all the way and settled down in the village first. When the ninja school starts in a few days, I will try to arrange the admission of Shiroyu and Xianglin. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Bai Mingyu showed a grateful smile at the right time, and the mother and daughter also bowed in thanks. The 3 of them left the Hokage building and followed the Anbu to Konoha East Street. This is it. The ninja dog Anbu stopped in front of a house and pointed. The room on the left is slightly larger and is for Miya-sama and your daughter. The room next door belongs to Shiroha Asakawa. You guys need to settle in first. Anbu will send subsidies and some necessary supplies later. You can have a good rest, this will be your home in Konoha from now on. Quote. After the Anbu finished speaking, he formed a hand seal, turned into smoke with a bang, and left. Bai Mingyu stood on the street and looked to the other side of East Street. This place. It seems to be the residence of the Thousand Hands clan. Most of the walls of the row of houses going in from East Street have a symmetrical family emblem printed on them, which is clearly the symbol of Senju. This was once the largest clan in Konoha and had given birth to strong men of Senju Hashirama's level. After 3 generations of Hokages in power, it was now in dire straits. Especially after the end of the Third War, after Tsunade, the only Senju princess who could lead the way, left Konoha, there were only 3 or 2 kittens left, all of them were old, weak, sick and disabled tribesmen. Looking around, there were only a few people. A scene of sunset over the western mountains. However, because of the lofty reputation the Senju clan once had, although their base has shrunk significantly compared to the first and second generations, it has not been completely recovered. But judging from their current situation, it would only be a matter of time before they were completely destroyed. The mother and daughter were arranged to live here, probably because of the blood connection between the Uzumaki and Senju clans, and by the way, it would increase the popularity of the Senju clan, which had been dormant for a long time. Bai Mingyu, on the other hand, was exposed to Uzumaki Mia's light. Brother Bai Yu, my mother and I are going to clean up the room first. We will come out to play with you later. Xiongling waved his hand and followed his mother into the door on the left. Bai Mingyu entered the house on the right. Clean up the room first, and then go out for treasure hunting. Half an hour later, Bai Mingyu, who had changed into clean clothes, appeared on the streets of Konoha village. I bought an ice cream cone from a roadside stall and ate it while walking. According to what the Anbu said before, orphans like him without parents will receive some financial subsidies every month. The amount is not much, almost 1,000 silver taels per month. In addition, because he is a new arrival, he will be given a one-time subsidy of part of the settlement fee to purchase daily necessities such as sheets and bedding. As for what 1,000 silver taels can do, here is an example. The monetary system of the Naruto world is based on silver, with auxiliary coins being 1 yuan, and 1 tael equals 10 yuan. According to the average price of goods in Konoha village, the monthly salary of a working-class civilian is between 5,000 and 10,000 taels, which is equivalent to the salary level of a genin, while the net worth of a chunin and a junin is much richer. An ordinary family of 3 spends about 500 taels on food and cooking every month. However, if they go to a barbecue restaurant to eat and drink in the lake, these 500 taels can only cover 2 or 3 times. Moreover, in addition to eating, we also need to buy clothes and daily necessities. If you are a ninja, you also need to buy ninja tools for training. Calculated in this way, 1,000 taels can barely sustain the food and clothing of a family, but it is definitely not enough. If you squander a few times, you will be hungry in the next half month. So in the original work, Naruto drinks expired milk, eats instant noodles every day, and never changes into a set of orange clothes all year round. Of course, this is also related to the fact that Naruto has lived alone since he was a child and does not know how to manage money. If he is the kind of protagonist with full life skills, he can live happily with 1,000 taels per month. This is it. Bai Mingyu stopped at an intersection, looked around calmly, then squatted down next to a telephone pole and pretended to tie his shoes. However, a hand quietly touched the corner of the wall next to it. In the corner where no one saw it, a black iron box was emitting a faint light. Black iron treasure chest. Compared with the bronze treasure chest that previously opened the Lion King, the black iron treasure chest is obviously 1 level lower. Opening the lid of the box, when the black light dissipated, a simple thread-bound book appeared in Bai Mingyu's hand. Congratulations to the host for opening the black iron treasure chest and obtaining. Do you want to learn the fighting skill Blowing Fire Palm? Fire Blowing Palm, a low-level fighting skill at the Zan level. It is said to have been created by a blacksmith. It can create strong wind pressure. Blow the fire palm. What the hell is this? The corner of Bai Mingyu's mouth twitched. He originally thought that the treasure chest could only contain things like the imperial gear or the 6th form of the navy. He didn't expect that even the fighting skills in Do Po Kang Chong could be used, but the name of the fire-blowing palm just go low and burst, okay. Even if you change it to Baji Bang or something. After choosing to study, Bai Mingyu's attribute column also quietly changed. Name: Asakawa Shiroyu's attribute values increase by 300 when in the half-animal state. Age: 7 years old. Chakra: 140,140. Ninjutsu value: 14. Physical skill value: 26. Illusion value: 10. Skills: Shuriken throwing technique LV5 and 1253 1600ths, beginner's sword technique LV2 and 149 200ths, Navy 6 style shaver LV1 and 21 100ths, fire palm LV1 and 0 100ths. Backpack: Taigu Lion King, detonating talisman X11. Except for the physical skill value, which increased by more than 10 points after taking the primary cell activation potion, the other attributes did not change much. However, in the half-animal state, Bai Mingyu's taijutsu value will reach an astonishing 78 points, which is close to the Chunin level in terms of physical fitness alone. Even some ordinary Chunin who are not very proficient in taijutsu may not be able to reach this value in taijutsu. But this does not mean that his strength has reached the Chunin level. The two almost blank shortcomings of ninjutsu and genjutsu greatly limit Bai Mingyu's overall strength. Basic ninjutsu can be learned in a ninja school, but higher level techniques can only be learned through other methods. Bai Mingyu thought as he walked. But these are things for the future. If you are new to Konoha for the time being, you should get familiar with Konoha's environment first. You don't have to think about it so much. Next, Bai Mingyu found the remaining 2 black iron treasure chests in 2 other places in Konoha village. One of them contained a kunai, and the other one contained the 6th form of the navy. Iron block. Iron block, a defensive technique in the 6 postures, injects strength into the rigorously trained body, giving it an iron-like hardness. Even ordinary guns, bullets and knives cannot break through. Bai Mingyu was a little disappointed that he didn't get anything like devil fruit, but the iron block and the blowing fire palm were complementary to each other in attack and defense. He deliberately found a small forest and tested the power of the two. Level 1's fire-blowing palm, without the cooperation of other skills, uses about 2% of its strength, and the thrust generated can break a small tree as thick as a bowl. If it hits a vital point at close range, even a ninja may not be able to bear it. As for the iron block, I can't test it by myself, but judging from the steel-like color on the skin when activated, the defensive performance shouldn't be too bad. Before the new treasure chest is refreshed, let's practice a few skills first. That evening, Bai Mingyu returned to the place where he lived. He was already exhausted. From a distance, he saw Xiang Ling sitting on the steps at the door. When he saw his figure, the little girl stood up quickly and patted the dirt on her clothes. She was so immature. There was a bit of displeasure on his face. Brother Bai Yu, where have you been during the day? Didn't we agree to go out to play together? Sorry, I have something to do temporarily. I'll play with you next time. Bai Mingyu smiled, looked at the little girl's bulging face, and suddenly stretched out his 2 fingers in a wicked way and lightly tapped Xianglu's forehead. Forgive me, Xianglu, I stupid sister. Xiang Phosphorus rolled his eyes speechlessly. The child is forgetful, and Xiang Phosphorus was not really angry at first. After complaining for a few times, he pulled Bai Mingyu into the house. Come on, Mom has cooked a rich meal and is waiting for you to come back together. I've been waiting for a long time to eat. Stew, mushroom soup, fish soup. When Bai Mingyu and Xiangling entered the room, the table was already filled with hot meals. Uzumaki Mia was placing the dishes and chopsticks. When she turned around and saw the 2 children, she smiled and said, I'm back. Anbu came here in the afternoon and delivered them some living supplies and settlement expenses, so I cooked a few more dishes, and Bai Yu also stayed to eat together. You're welcome, we're just like a family. When I first arrived in Konoha, no matter how good the atmosphere in Konoha was, it was still a strange environment. For mother and daughter, Bai Mingyu, who came from the country of grass together, is the closest person. Bai Mingyu thanked him and sat down across the table with Xiangling. While eating, they chatted about their experiences in Konoha. Uzumaki Mia suddenly said, By the way, Xiangling, Bai Yu, if you have nothing to do recently, try not to go out at night. When I was buying groceries today, I heard people at the market say that a delegation from the Kingdom of Thunder is coming to Konoha village recently. The Kingdom of Thunder and the Kingdom of Fire are currently in hostile relations. It may not be right for them to come here. What a good thing. So if you too meet someone outside who is dressed differently from Konoha village, you must be more careful. Land of Thunder. Bai Mingyu was slightly startled. Although he did not think that the delegation from the Kingdom of Thunder would dare to risk offending the powerful enemy Konoha and do something in the village, but since Uzumaki Miya reminded him like this, he immediately agreed. I understand, and Mei, you should also be careful. After finishing the meal, Bai Mingyu stood up to say goodbye and returned to his room. Early the next morning, Bai Mingyu finished washing up early and started his training plan. It's called a plan, but it's actually very simple. It's nothing more than basic weight-bearing exercises, plus 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and 10 kilometers of running every day. Although I don't plan to become bald, relying on this kind of training can improve some physical fitness. In the final analysis, whether it is the sixth form of Navy or the physical burden brought by the Lion King, a strong physique is needed to support it. In order to maximize the effect of shaving and iron blocks, Bai Mingyu put on the weight-bearing vest and leggings he bought at the ninja shop yesterday, stuffed 10 kilograms of iron blocks inside, and ran out of the house after feeling that the weight was almost acceptable, ran along the street towards the outskirts of Konoha village. It was still early in the morning, most people were still immersed in sleep, and they met almost no one along the way. It wasn't until I ran out of the village that I heard the sound of rustling footsteps. As soon as he turned his head, he saw a figure wearing green tights, with thick eyebrows and big eyes, and a watermelon head, sprinting from behind through the thick fog, more than 5 or 6 times faster than Bai Mingyu. When he passed by, turned his head and glanced, gave a thumbs up, showing his shining white teeth. Hey, this is the passion of youth, young man, come and face the rising sun with me and run 100 times around Konoha village. The corner of Bai Mingyu's mouth twitched, and he felt like he was full of flaws and didn't know where to vomit. This guy in green tights is naturally Metkai. The current Kai is not the instructing Jonin of the third team 10 years later. He has trained the 8-gate dungeon to an unprecedented level and almost kicked him out of the finale. Instead, he is only a boy of 18 or 19 years old, but he only watched in terms of appearance, he is much older than his actual age. Some people believe him even if he says he is 24 or 5 years old. Kai gave a thumbs up and waited for a long time without seeing a response. The atmosphere was a bit awkward for a while, but Kai quickly changed his posture, patted his chest, held his head high, and opened his arms like shooting into the sun, posing in a special-looking pose. Silly posture. Hey, it seems your blood is not surging enough. Come on, let me, Konoha's noble blue beast, Metkai, lead you towards the morning sun. ZZ. Bai Mingyu couldn't complain. It is true that Kai's strength is unquestionable. After growing up, in terms of physical skills alone, he is one of the strongest Jonin in Konoha. The 8-gate dungeon is the pinnacle of Naruto's physical skills. In the later stage, all 8 gates are opened. In this state, he almost kicked out the finale. But not everyone has an insanely strong physique like him and Xiao Li. If most people train with that kind of intensity, they will probably die. Therefore, Bai Mingyu waved his hand decisively and rejected Kai's proposal. Kai smacked his lips with regret, but didn't say much. He shouted a few declarations of youth, then hurried forward and quickly disappeared on the road in the distance with a puff of smoke. Ah, I feel the power of youth rushing. Quote. Bai Mingyu watched Kai's figure disappear at the end of the road silently. Suddenly, a sudden thought came to his mind. Speaking of which, what would happen if I equipped Kai with the Taigu Lion King and then used the 8-gate dungeon? Can the Lion King's powerful recovery ability neutralize or even completely offset the side effects of the 8-door Dunjia formation? Furthermore, if instead of the Lion King, it is replaced by the phoenix fruit from the pirate world, let Kai eat it. It's scary to think about having a physique with infinite rebirth and then maintaining it in the state of 8-door Dunjia formation. This thought flashed through Bai Mingyu's mind, although he also knew that this kind of thing was unlikely. After all, the recovery and healing ability of the Phoenix Fruit and the Lion King were only theoretically close to infinite, but it was not without limits. If the injury exceeds a certain level, it will die even in half animal or fruit form. However, it is worth trying the idea of using the Lion King to offset the side effects of the first few doors of the 8-door Dunjia. An hour later, Bai Mingyu returned to his residence. As soon as he unloaded the weight, Xianglu came over and knocked on the door, dragging him over to have breakfast. Bai Mingyu originally refused this kind of freeloading, but then he thought about it. His cooking skills were really not that good. In addition, he might have to go out for a run every morning in the future. When he came back, he was exhausted and had no intention of lighting a fire to cook. It is not as convenient as eating ready-made meals. If you really feel bad about it, just help the Shang Phosphorus family with some housework in the future. When I thought about it, I went over to have a meal with peace of mind. After the meal, with the help of Shang Lian and Uzumaki Mia's request, Bai Mingyu had no choice but to hold Xiao Shang Lian's hand and planned to take her around the village to familiarize herself with the living environment. Although Bai Mingyu said he didn't like taking care of children, in fact, Bai Mingyu himself was a little curious about Konoha. Konoha village is very big, and what he passed when he opened the treasure chest yesterday was only a small part of the village. So I took this opportunity to wander around the village with Shang Phosphorus. It wasn't until noon that I decided to find a place nearby to eat. Brother Bai Yu, let's go to that restaurant to eat. It smells so delicious. Shang Ling tugged at the corner of Bai Mingyu's clothes and pointed away, showing a greedy look. Bai Mingyu looked at the sound and was slightly startled. Ichiraku Ramen. Isn't this the ramen restaurant opened by Uncle Ichiraku Otsutsuki, the big boss behind the scenes in the original work? I don't know if Naruto will be eating there now, but it would be interesting if he happened to meet it. With this idea in mind, Bai Mingyu opened the curtain and was about to walk into the store, but suddenly paused. His pupils were slightly opened, and his eyes fell on a corner of the ramen shop with surprise. At the same time, a young voice sounded, which sounded inexplicably familiar. Uncle, have another bowl. Taking a closer look, I saw a child with blonde hair sitting in front of the ramen restaurant counter. Wearing a white short-sleeved t-shirt, the clothes were smeared dirty, and he had a bright yellow hedgehog head. There were 3 or 4 empty bowls piled in front of him, and he was still slurping down the noodles and even the soup. Drink everything. Naruto. This familiar outfit, who else could it be if it wasn't Uzumaki Naruto? Just when Bai Mingyu was stunned, Naruto seemed to be aware of the sight coming from behind. His little body stiffened for a moment, and he slowly turned his head and looked back. Green goggles, a few bruises on his small face, obviously not like those caused by a fall, but the owner of the face didn't care, and was swallowing noodles with big mouthfuls, and the beard on both cheeks was covered with bruises, a little bit of noodle soup. You, who are you? I don't think I've seen you in the village before. Pretending to be calm, his blue eyes held a hint of vigilance. Let me meet you. My name is Asakawa Shiroha, and this is my companion, Uzumaki Karen. After Bai Mingyu was initially surprised, he quickly calmed down and waved hello. Shang Ling walked in and looked at Naruto with some curiosity, seeming to feel a familiar aura from him. After all, Naruto also has half of the Uzumaki bloodline in his body, and the same bloodline will have some special resonance. Swirl. Sure enough, Naruto was stunned for a moment when he heard Shanglin's name. He muttered a few words, then suddenly opened his eyes and shouted in surprise, "What a coincidence, the last name is the same as mine. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I am 3 years old this year. I am the man who will become Hokage." Familiar lines. Bai Mingyu curled up the corner of his mouth and smiled quietly. He really wanted to tell the blonde child in front of him that if a man wants to become Hokage, he must first let Hinata or one of the 2 pillars become Hokage. But with Naruto's IQ, I guess he couldn't understand it even if he said it. At that moment, Bai Mingyu smiled. Then please take good care of me, future Hokage-sama. He took Shanglin and sat down next to Naruto and ordered 2 bowls of tonkatsu ramen. Uncle Yil responded and started to work. Next to him, a little girl who looked to be only 7 or 8 years old was helping. It seemed that she should be Uncle Yil's daughter, Chongpu. A girl who didn't have many roles in the original novel, but because of Naruto, she appeared in many more scenes than the average passerby. I have to say that Uncle Yil's craftsmanship is indeed good. Before the noodles are even out of the pot, a strong meaty aroma emanates from the soup pot and permeates the small shop, making people unable to help but move their index fingers. Xiao Xianglin salivated, and Bai Mingyu also swallowed quietly. At this time, Naruto next to him suddenly put down his bowls and chopsticks, stopped eating noodles, and looked straight at Bai Mingyu and Xianglu. What's wrong? Bai Mingyu felt a little hairy when he looked at him. Well, don't you think what I just said was a bit too much? Naruto scratched his head, as if he wanted to speak but didn't know how to describe it. I have mentioned these things in front of others before about becoming Hokage or something like that. At that time, they didn't quite believe it. What's the difference between being a human being without dreams and a salted fish? Bai Mingyu smiled and said lightly, being Hokage. Which boy who grew up in Konoha has not had this idea? How can he be sure of what will happen in the future now? Naruto also grinned, his 8 teeth shining brightly. Yeah, well, although I don't quite understand what I heard, I still feel that you were right. Sure enough, I still have the potential to be the Hokage. Well, as the strongest user of the mouth escape technique in all of Hokage, and the most powerful illusion of the will of fire, which is second only to the 3rd generation in terms of brainwashing effect on people, he certainly has the potential to become Hokage. Bai Mingyu smiled and did not continue talking. But while he was silent, Naruto opened up his chatterbox and started talking. Hey, Bai Yu, Xianglu, are you from outside the village? This is my first time meeting people from other villages. Are there ninjas in the land of grass? What are your villages like? Xiang Phosphorus, why is your hair red? It always looks so familiar. It seems like I have seen this kind of hair somewhere. How about we go out to play together after dinner later? I know there is a fun place in Konoha. You must have never been to it. While waiting for the ramen to be served, Naruto kept chattering, which made Xiangling impatient. He slapped the table and said with a fierce expression on his face, can you calm down for a while? Brother Bai Yu and I haven't eaten yet, I'm about to starve to death, how can I have the heart to listen to you, Barabala? Naruto was startled and quickly shut his mouth. Seeing this, Bai Mingyu smiled apologetically. He could understand Naruto's current state of mind. This child, who lost his parents at birth and grew up as a 9-tailed Jinchuriki, has endured indifference and injustice from all aspects in the village since he was a child. He grew up alone, with the exception of probably the 3rd Hokage and Uncle Ichiraku. A few people who could listen to him calmly. Regarding his so-called becoming Hokage, he treated it as a fantasy, either sneered at it, ridiculed it, or simply ignored it. It was rare to find an audience who was willing to listen to his chatter, and Naruto's excitement was palpable. In just a few words, he quickly revealed all his secrets. From the books I usually like to read, to some experiences in the village, and finally even the little secret of falling in love at first sight with a certain pink-haired girl in the village. Bai Mingyu was stunned when he heard this. I guess, this Tama is only a few years old, and he has already started to have a crush on Sakura. If in the previous life on Earth, a child of this age would probably still wear crotchless pants and play in the mud in the kindergarten. Even if children in the Naruto world are generally precocious, this is a bit exaggerated. After drinking the last sip of ramen soup, Bai Mingyu wiped his mouth and pressed a banknote under the bowl. He stood up and left the ramen shop, followed by Kosovo and Naruto. We had a lot of fun chatting today, but it's getting late, so you should go home. Bai Mingyu looked back at Naruto. Well, goodbye then, Bai Yu, and Xiang Phosphorus. Naruto waved his hand, looking somewhat reluctant to leave. It seems that this little guy really doesn't have many friends, otherwise he wouldn't have such an obvious liking for Bai Mingyu and Xianglu just because of a chance encounter. Of course, this is also because Bai Mingyu and Xiangling seem to be children of similar age to him. If they were adults, Naruto might not open up so easily. After all, to him, most of the adults in the village had malicious intentions. Bai Mingyu turned around after watching the short figure disappear into the building. Let's go. After sending Xiang Phosphorus home, Bai Mingyu did not go home. Instead, he went into the house to get a weight-bearing vest, put it on, and walked out of the village again. It's still early before bedtime, so I can still do a little exercise to digest while I've just finished eating. After jogging all the way to an open forest outside the village, Bai Mingyu took a deep breath and began to practice seriously. The first was shuriken throwing and entry-level sword skills. These two skills were discovered by him and he had been practicing them when he lived in the country of grass. Because I was short of money, I used wooden knives for practice before. Although he did not intend to become a top swordsman like Konoha, White Fang or Mifune, but considering that he might be able to use a Taigu Murasama or a supreme sword or other weapons in the future, he still honed his sword honestly. Technique: hold a long knife in both hands and chop over and over again, practicing the speed and strength of swinging the knife. After 500 sword swings, the 6th marine style and fire palm are next. These two skills consume more physical energy. Bai Mingyu had to practice for a while and stop until the moon was above the willow branches. Then he wiped off his sweat and walked back under the stars. At the same time, inside a certain room in the Hokage building, the old-looking third Hokage had his hands crossed in front of his chin, a pipe in his mouth, looking at the picture in the crystal ball in front of him, muttering something silently. Asakawa Hakua, the third Hokage, didn't go home in the middle of the night and hid here to peek. It was not a temporary act. It was because of the recent arrival of the delegation from the Kingdom of Thunder that I had some extra official duties. After finishing the paperwork, I took a peek at my disciple's son, Uzumaki Naruto, to see if this kid was up to any other mischief. But he didn't expect to see Bai Mingyu in the crystal ball. In the past few days since Bai Mingyu and his mother and daughter arrived in Konoha village, the third Hokage has sent Anbu to the country of grass to verify the previous living conditions of several people. Some of the news has been sent back via carrier pigeons. Judging from the information, there is no problem with the backgrounds of the three people. Needless to say, Uzumaki Miya and Xiongling are confirmed to be the orphans of the Uzumaki clan. Among them, Koso's father was also a member of the Uzumaki clan and was accidentally killed in the Third Ninja War a few years ago. And this child named Asakawa Baiyu also had an innocent life experience because his parents were murdered by bandits and he became an orphan. There are many such children in any country, and Konoha has taken in many of them. However, Naruto has a special status after all. He is the nine-tailed Jinchuriki of Konoha, and there are many people who want to get close to him with various intentions. In order to avoid a recurrence of disaster, there are some things that must be taken into consideration. Compared to these, those guys from Union Village came here at this time. I'm afraid it's not a good thing. I hope they can stay safe and don't cause trouble. The camera switched to another location. The third Hokage looked at the hotel where the Kumoin village delegation was staying in the crystal ball and sighed secretly. Bai Mingyu didn't know that he was included in the observation list by the third Hokage. But while walking on the road, he did feel a sense of being spied on. He looked up and looked around, but found nothing unusual. Is this feeling of being targeted? Is it the crystal ball of a third-generation old man? Anyway, there is no such thing as a camera in this world. Is it because I had contact with Naruto that I was noticed? Bai Mingyu pondered slightly. If the only person paying attention to him was the third Hokage, it would not be a big problem, but if there were other high-level officials of Konoha who were also spying on him, such as Shimura Danzo, it would be troublesome. As we all know, this old Yinbi likes to lure young children into his base, and Bai Mingyu has no intention of working for him. When you practice outside in the future, you should hide a few trump cards appropriately. Crossing a street, Bai Mingyu was about to walk forward when he suddenly caught a trace of movement in the corner of his eye. Turning his head suddenly, he looked over and saw a dark figure stepping on the roof of a house not far away and quickly passed by. It seemed as if he was holding something in his arms. In the blink of an eye, several figures appeared. 10 meters away, it appeared at the end of the long street. That is, Bai Mingyu's eyes narrowed. Why is this guy holding a treasure box in his arms with that faint silvery glow? Apart from the treasure box, he is not the second choice. However, others besides yourself can also see the treasure chest. The thought passed away in a flash, and I didn't think much about it. Half-animal state turned on. In an instant, the cat ears were raised, and Bai Mingyu's eyes turned into feline vertical pupils. In this state, everything in his sight became extremely clear, and he could clearly see the figure with a black cloth his face was covered, a black cloak covered his whole body, and he held a little girl carved in pink and jade in his arms. She has short dark purple hair, and although her eyebrows have not yet grown, you can already vaguely see what she will look like when she grows up. Hinata. Could it be that the figure in front is a ninja from Union Village? Suddenly, Bai Mingyu recalled what Uzumaki Miya had said about the delegation from the Kingdom of Thunder visiting Konoha. After hesitating for a moment, he leaned over and chased after him. In his semi-animal state, he turned into a hunting lion. He crossed the street in just a few seconds, jumped onto the roof, took a shortcut and ran for dozens of meters, then jumped and blocked the road. In front of the ninjas of Hidden Cloud Village. Scare. A black shadow suddenly appeared in front of him. The ninja of Hidden Cloud Village was startled. He stopped almost subconsciously and met a pair of eyes shining with a faint green light in front of him. What? Yun Ninja also reacted quickly. While his steps stopped, he pulled out a shuriken from his back with a swipe, raised his hand and swung it forward. A flash of sword light flashed out of thin air in the darkness, and with a few crisp ping-ping-pong-pong sounds, several shurikens were knocked down. Bai Mingyu had already straightened up, holding a long knife in his hand, looking at him warily. The cloud-bearing ninja. Is this the way Union Village treats guests? It's really unfriendly. Quote, quote. Yun Ren's pupils shrank, and he suddenly stamped his foot on the ground. He rushed over extremely quickly. His speed was no less than Bai Mingyu's. Bai Mingyu's pupils shrank. The opponent's decisive action was somewhat beyond his expectation. At such a distance, it was too late to dodge. Bai Mingyu took a deep breath, and a force surged violently in his body and gathered near his chest. 6-type iron block. Suddenly, a steely color appeared in front of him. Yun Ren slashed with his palm, and it felt as if he had struck a piece of steel. Instead of knocking Bai Mingyu unconscious as expected, his own arm was sore from the shock. However, the force of the sword was blocked by the iron block, and all the subsequent impact fell on Bai Mingyu. He took 3 or 4 steps back before he regained his footing, and immediately raised his head to watch Yun Nin's movements. It's okay. Yun Ninja's expression changed. Obviously he didn't expect this to happen. If it was a ninja of the same level as him, he would have been able to block the blow just now. However, the opponent was just a child of 7 or 8 years old, and he was still unscathed despite being hit. This made Yun Ninja look a little confused. But as an elite chunin of Union Village, his psychological quality is naturally far superior to that of ordinary people. After a brief hesitation, he snorted coldly. Kid, you are asking for death. Yun Ren stared at Bai Mingyu fiercely, and quickly formed several complex hand seals with his hands. At the same time, his throat buzzed a few times, as if he was preparing to release some kind of ninjutsu, fire release how fireball technique. Suddenly, I saw Yun Nin open his mouth and spit out a huge ball of flames, sweeping towards this side. The heat wave that rose in an instant made Bai Mingyu's hair stand up, and he felt a burning sensation, as if the skin on his face was about to be burned by flames. Is this the power of ninjutsu? It was only AC level fire escape ninjutsu, but it gave Bai Mingyu an unprecedented sense of crisis, as if his whole person was going to be burned to death by this ball of fire. Fight. Bai Mingyu narrowed his eyes, bit the tip of his tongue sharply to calm down, then opened one hand and faced Yun Nin with his palm, blow fire palm. Pong. The powerful wind surged out from the palm of his hand, forming a huge thrust and colliding head-on with the Cloud Ninja's fire release technique. With all his strength, this thrust not only dispersed the large fireball in midair, but also opened a path through the flames, and then hit the unprepared Cloud Ninja behind. The latter was shocked and hurriedly hid aside. The next moment, his whole body seemed to have been hit by a heavy punch. His shoulders staggered and he staggered back a few steps before stopping in embarrassment. How is it possible? You can use the wind escape without using any seals. Blowing fire palm, which relies on wind power to generate thrust, is naturally regarded as wind release. However, what surprised Yun Nin was that Bai Mingyu's fire-blowing palm could be used instantly. You know, in that moment, Yun Ninja was obviously the first to take action, but it took 2 seconds to form the seal in the middle. When the How Fireball technique was released, it was even a split second later than Bai Mingyu's fire-blowing palm. The created flame sphere was blown away by the latter. The same Muji ninjutsu as the Rasengan. And in terms of power, it is at least AC level ninjutsu or above. Yun Ninja was stunned again. This kind of situation would never happen to an elite ninja like him. Wrong, this is not Feng Dan. Bai Mingyu had already calmed down, his waist sank, his soul suddenly stepped on the ground a dozen times, and his figure jumped forward like a ghost. Navy 6 style shave. Chapter 11. Bai Mingyu's figure suddenly disappeared. Yun Ninja tensed up, thinking that he was going to launch a sneak attack from a certain direction, so he quickly pulled out a kunai from his waist and looked around nervously. Suddenly, a shadow swayed on the left side, and the cloud ninja immediately threw the kunai, but the kunai penetrated through the shadow out of thin air, without any trace of blood showing. Two-stage shave. The sound of wind suddenly appeared, and Bai Mingyu's figure appeared behind Yun Nin, grabbing the thing on his back with both hands, and before the former could react, he hugged him into his arms, then quickly retreated and distanced himself again. The whole process happened in just a split second. By the time Yun Ninja reacted, the little Lolita who was tied behind his back had already changed hands. From the beginning, Bai Mingyu's target was not this Yun Ninja. It was Hinata whom he kidnapped. To be more precise, it was the silver-white treasure box tied behind Hinata's back. Silver treasure chest. The reason why the treasure chest is refreshed in such a place is probably due to some bad taste of the system. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Bai Mingyu would not believe that there was such a naughty operation. After a brief hesitation, he picked up the little loli and touched the silver treasure chest behind Hinata with one hand. It only took a moment to open the treasure chest. The next moment, a prompt sounded in Bai Mingyu's mind, and his pupils dilated instantly. Congratulations to the host for opening the silver treasure chest and obtaining Zanpakuto Soda Shirayuki's initial recovery state. Chop, soul, knife. Bai Mingyu's hand shook and he almost threw Hinata out of his arms. He never expected that a Zanpakuto would be found in the silver treasure chest this time. The Zanpakuto is the sword used by the god of death among the Shinigami. Its shape, state, and abilities are based on the soul of the god of death. Each Zanpakuto has different shapes and abilities, such as fire, ice system, illusion system, etc., to name a few. The Shinigami gains power by knowing the name of the Zanpakuto given to him and by having spiritual conversations with it. And to gain their power, the liberation of the Zanpakuto must be completed. Liberation is divided into Hakakai and Swastika. The condition for Hakakai is to know the true name of the Zanpakuto, and to liberate the true form and power of the Zanpakuto by calling the true name. If you want to learn the Swastika, you must realize the actual form of the Zanpakuto and surrender it. The Soda Shirayuki that Bai Mingyu opened is the sword of the heroine in the original work, Kuchiki Rukia. It belongs to the ice and snow type. Among all the Zanpakuto, it is not the most powerful, but it is famous for its pure white blade. It is called the most beautiful Zanpakuto in the Soul Society. If I remember correctly, the beginning of this Zanpakuto should be. Bai Mingyu took out Shu Baishui from his backpack, held it in his hand, and took a slow breath. Let's dance together, Shu Baishui. Suddenly, Soda Shirayuki's blade trembled. Then, I saw a flash of ice-like white light up from the tip of the knife, and then quickly expanded downwards. In the blink of an eye, the entire blade, handguard and even the handle became completely snow-white, covered with fine frost-like patterns. There is also an extra white ribbon on the handle. This is exactly Soda Shirayuki's initial state of liberation. Then the first dance of the moon. Frost spread. For Yun Ninja, today's night is destined to be an unforgettable night. The kid in front of him first used a weird Muji ninjutsu to break his own fire release, and then used an incredibly fast teleportation technique to snatch the kidnapping target away from him. But now, when he grabbed it out of thin air, he had a sword in his hand. Even though Yun Ninja's eyes widened, he didn't see clearly where he took out the knife. It was such a tachi that looked very elegant, like a carefully carved work of art. It gave Yun Ninja a sense of crisis that made his hair stand on end, as if it was not an ordinary knife, but one that had been cut off by the one in front of him. It's like a ferocious beast in the boy's hand. What is happening? In the original plan, once he succeeded, he would immediately return to the rendezvous point and join the delegation from the Kingdom of Thunder to meet him. In the process, he would meet at most a few members of the Hyuga family, but as long as the head of the Hyuga family did not take action himself, Yun Ninja is confident that he will escape unscathed. But, where did this kid come from? Although he is not very old and does not look like a member of the Hyuga clan, he possesses all kinds of strange abilities. Why did they not get any corresponding information about this kid in advance? Could it be a secret weapon secretly cultivated by Konoha? The Kumo Hidden Village mission had originally made a plan to kidnap Hinata, but now an unexpected omission suddenly appeared in the plan, which temporarily disrupted Kumo Shinobu's mind and he didn't know what choice to make. But Bai Mingyu didn't have so many worries. He held Soda Shirayuki in one hand and gently drew the tip of his Zanpakuto in a circular arc on the ground. Following his movement, the temperature in the sky and earth enveloped by this circle dropped sharply. In just a few seconds, countless flying snowflakes appeared, as if they had stepped directly from the scorching summer to the cold winter. Centered on Bai Mingyu's feet, a layer of white frost appeared from scratch on the ground within a radius of 10 meters, and quickly spread to the surrounding area. Then there is freezing. The ground beneath our feet, the grass on the roadside, and the dim street lights were all quickly covered with hoarfrost, and were frozen by ice and snow in the blink of an eye. In this world, both Yun Nin and Bai Mingyu himself felt a biting coldness, as if they were thrown into a cold ice cave. Yun Nin's movements were a little stiff and he wanted to turn around and escape. Just as he moved forward, Bai Mingyu's blade curled up and suddenly raised a cloud of snowflakes. Ice palm. The ice and snow condensed into the shape of a palm and suddenly grabbed it towards Yun Ninja. Under the low temperature, Yun Nin's movements had become very sluggish, and now his calf was directly grabbed by the ice palm. Then the frost quickly spread towards the upper body, seeming to freeze the whole person into an ice sculpture. At the critical moment, the Cloud Ninja also let out a loud roar. Chakra quickly condensed on his legs, shattered the ice on his legs with all his strength, and ran away as hard as he could. Just after running a few steps, there was a sudden sound of wind. Bai Mingyu appeared behind him and hit the Yun Nin with a knife on his neck. The latter staggered, fell to the ground, and fainted. Call. Bai Mingyu breathed a long sigh of relief, sheathed his sword, and at the same time released his half-animal state. After escaping from the country of grass, this was the first time he fought against someone, and his opponent was a ninja. Although he won, the process was not easy. If Hinata hadn't happened to find a magical weapon like Soda Shirayuki from the treasure chest on Hinata's body, it's hard to say what the outcome would have been. Even now, the low-temperature environment created by Soda Shirayuki will actually affect the knife wielder himself. If it weren't for the increased tolerance to low temperatures in the half-animal state, I'm afraid even I would be frostbitten. Bai Mingyu shook the ice chips off his body and let out a long breath of cold air. He silently glanced at his attribute bar. In the system, Soda Shirayuki's ability seems to be regarded as a ninjutsu, which requires the consumption of chakra to use. The two moves just used to subdue the Kumo ninja have consumed nearly a quarter of his chakra. It is equivalent to the consumption of sea-level ninjutsu. Once the chakra is exhausted, the frozen field should also be lifted. Bai Mingyu thought. In the final analysis, the amount of chakra depends on both physical energy and mental energy. His current body is just that of a 7 or 8-year-old child, and there is no Uzumaki or Senju clan blood in his body. No matter how hard he practices, it is impossible to increase the amount of chakra to the Jonin level in a short period of time, even with a lack of blue physique. Kakashi, who is famous in the ninja world, has far more chakra than him, not to mention Naruto and Karen who have the physique of the Uzumaki clan. After all, Gogokai is Konoha's elite Jonin. If the Sharingan doesn't consume too much mana, his own mana reserve is still quite large. Take your time, you can't become fat in one bite. Increasing the amount of chakra itself is a long-term accumulation process. Even with the treasure box system, it cannot be achieved overnight. Bai Mingyu flipped his wrist and put Soda Shirayuki back into the system backpack. Then he untied the package wrapped around Hinata from behind and looked at her curiously. Hinata is still in a state of not growing up at all. She has a pink face, a little baby fat, red lips and white teeth. She looks like a cute little loli. At this time, she seemed to have finally been awakened, or woken up by the cold. She opened her eyes in a daze, and looked around with her pink face, completely confused as to why she was here. Woke up. Bai Mingyu smiled and pinched little Hinata's face. The chubby little face felt good. He did it casually without thinking too much, but Hinata was startled by the sudden force on his face. He screamed, and there was a bit of panic in his pure white eyes. Being looked at by such a pair of ignorant eyes, Bai Mingyu felt a little guilty for no reason. Why does it feel like I'm bullying a child? He scratched his head and put down little Hinata. Bai Mingyu leaned over to check Yun Nin's condition. During this process, Hinata stood aside obediently, watching Bai Mingyu's movements with a confused expression. Although she wanted to know the current situation, Hinata still didn't ask. She just intuitively felt that the little brother in front of her, who was a few years older than herself, had no ill intentions and should not be a bad person. After a few minutes, the sound of hurried footsteps came from afar. A group of cataract patients, members of the Byakugan Hyuga clan appeared on one side of the street. The leader has a Chinese character face, long black hair, and a majestic appearance. He is clearly the head of the Hyuga clan, Hinata's father Hinata Hazashi. Hinata Hinashi looked anxious, as if he had already seen the scene on this side of the street, and as soon as he appeared, he strode over. Dad. When Hinata saw her father, her little face lit up with joy and she shouted loudly. Hinata had already hurried to the front, stretched out his hand to hold Hinata in his arms, checked and confirmed that there were no signs of injury, and then he breathed a sigh of relief, and his eyes fell on Baimingyu and Yun Ninja next to him. You are. Of course Hinata Hazu doesn't know Baimingyu. But when he hurried over just now, he had already used his eyes to see the situation here in advance. After briefly asking Hinata a few questions, he had roughly judged what happened. After heaving a sigh of relief, he looked at Yunren with a dignified look in his eyes. He walked forward, bowed his hands to Baimingyu and said, "Thank you, little friend, for rescuing my little girl. I can't thank you enough. I will definitely repay you in the future. Now, I hope that little friend can step aside a little and hand over this bad guy. We, the Hyuga clan, will handle it, thank you." Saying that, without waiting for Baimingyu to answer, Hinata Hazu grabbed Yun Nin's body. The two fingers were combined into a knife shape, and he used his strength to tap a certain acupuncture point on Yun Nin's body. It was clearly the soft boxing technique of the Hyuga clan. Following this, the Kumo ninja on the ground groaned in pain, showing signs of waking up. Baimingyu's eyelids twitched slightly as he watched this scene. Before Hinata Hazu made another move, he suddenly stretched out his hand to stop him. Little friend, what do you mean? Hinata Hazu frowned and looked at Baimingyu coldly. Although it was unintentional, after all, he was the head of the Hyuga clan and an elite jonin of Konoha village. The pressure that he radiated invisibly made Baimingyu feel a little difficult. He took a deep breath and said, "Head of the Hinata family, I have no intention of stopping you. I just want to remind you that if you want to kill this person, it is best to take off his mask and take a look at this person before you do it." Identity of. In this plot in the original book, when Hinata and Hazashi were snatching back Hinata, they directly killed the ninjas of Kumoin village, thus attracting pressure from the Kingdom of Thunder, which led to Hinata and Hazashi's death, which led to the tragedy of Hyuga Neji's life. If you haven't encountered it, that's it. But now, the person who defeated Yun Nin was Baimingyu. He deliberately spared Yun Nin's life. How could he watch Hinata and Hazu come out and interfere with each other, and then bring back the plot? What does this person's identity mean? Hinata Rizu looked at Baimingyu with a gloomy expression. He had just encountered his daughter being kidnapped. The head of the Hyuga family was in an emotional state and could not think calmly at all. However, among the Hyuga clan members who were following behind, a clan member who looked about 70–80% similar to Hiyashi came forward, squatted down and uncovered the Cloud Ninja, and his expression suddenly changed. This person is Big Brother. Hinata Hazu then looked at him, and his expression suddenly changed. He had seen this face in the interview hall of the Hokage building during the day today. He is clearly a ninja from Hidden Cloud Village. And he is a member of the delegation that came to Konoha on behalf of the Kingdom of Thunder for peace talks. If Baimingyu hadn't stopped him in time, he would have killed this person by mistake. Hinata Hazu had a look of shock on his face, and the momentum he had gathered on his body was released. Being able to become the head of the Hyuga family is naturally not a brainless person. After regaining his rationality, Hyuga Hazashi quickly figured out the joints. The Kumogakure mission came to Konoha nominally under the banner of negotiation. The apparent reason was to conduct peace talks in response to the small-scale wars that had occurred frequently on the border between the Land of Fire and the Land of Thunder in the past 2 years. The third Hokage took this very seriously. In an environment where Konoha has been hit hard one after another and its vitality has been greatly weakened, it is urgent to have a truce with the powerful enemy Thunder Country and sign a peace treaty. Therefore, before and after the meeting, the third Hokage repeatedly told the major families in Konoha to restrain their own clansmen and not to conflict with the Kumo ninja at this juncture. If at this time, the messenger of Union Village dies in Konoha, it will undoubtedly be a serious diplomatic incident and even affect the peace talks between the two countries. At this time, Hinata had not yet thought that the root of the matter involved the Byakugan of the Hyuga clan, and that the real target of the Kingdom of Thunder was not Hinata, but him, the leader of the Hyuga clan. Once they succeeded in their plan, Hyuga and Hinata would one of the brothers must take the initiative to die. But even so, Hinata Hazu broke into a cold sweat. So it turns out that it's the people from Kumogakure who came to seek revenge during the Third Ninja War. The Kingdom of Thunder suffered a great loss under the eyes of the Hyuga clan. Could it be that they came here to seek revenge? Or, not only seeking revenge, but also to gain the blood inheritance limit of the Hyuga clan, Byakugan? Hinata and Hazashi's face was gloomy and uncertain. Hazashi had already stood up, smiled at Bai Mingyu, and said gratefully, "Thank you so much, little brother. I didn't expect that the person who saved my eldest brother's daughter would be a child like you. I am really grateful. I am a Chunin of Konoha. If anything happens in the village in the future, if I can help, come to me as soon as possible." "You're welcome. Now that the matter has been resolved, I'll leave first. It's up to you how to deal with the next matter." Bai Mingyu said a few polite words, smiled at little Hinata who was holding on to the corner of his father's clothes and huddled behind Hinata, then turned and left. He didn't have any friendship with the Hyuga clan. He rescued Hinata just by chance and didn't expect to get anything in return. I have said all the things that need to be reminded. If the Hyuga clan still wants to kill this person even though they know that the other person is a Kumo ninja, then they can only blame themselves for not committing suicide. Speaking of which, do people from the Hyuga clan know how to use ninjutsu? Bai Mingyu suddenly came up with this idea. He really has little interest in the soft fist of the Hyuga clan, and without the assistance of Byakugan, even if he practices soft fist, he will not be able to exert its due power. But if it's ninjutsu, it's different. After entering Konoha, Bai Mingyu has been thinking about how to get access to those advanced ninjutsu. If the Hyuga clan has it, there is no need to worry about the Book of Seals. Except for Naruto, it can be easily stolen. If it had been anyone else, I'm afraid it wouldn't be that easy to get. But in the original work, we have never seen anyone from the Hyuga clan using ninjutsu other than basic ninjutsu. Let's find a chance to ask Hinata Hazashi later. This uncle seems to be relatively easy to talk to. After Bai Mingyu left, Hinata Hazu stood there for a long time. "Big brother, let's take this Kumo ninja back first, lock him up in the clan for the time being, and send a few elite clan members to guard him. After dawn tomorrow, I will go to see the Hokage in person to discuss it." Before he finished speaking, several clusters of leaves suddenly appeared. Hinata, Hazashi and Hazashi turned their heads at the same time, and saw the trees on the roadside suddenly moving, and several figures wearing masks and carrying long knives appeared on the tree trunks. The leader was a white-haired man wearing a fox mask. He jumped down from the tree trunk. "You are Master Hazu. We are Anbu members directly under the third Hokage, and we came here specifically to check what's going on here." Anbu. Hinata Hazu frowned, looked at his brother and said, "Do you have anything to prove your identity?" The white-haired man nodded, took out something from the ninja bag on his waist and threw it over. "This is the warrant signed by Lord Hokage before we came here. The subsequent handling of this matter will be taken over by our Anbu. In addition, the ninja of Union Village will also be taken away by us for investigation. Please understand, Mr. Rizu." Hinata Hazashi carefully identified the warrant, then turned to look at the Kumo ninja lying on the ground next to him. His expression changed a few times before he nodded. "Okay, we will hand over this person. But regarding this matter, I hope Lord Hokage can give us a satisfactory answer. Otherwise, our Hyuga clan will not give up." Soon, Hinata and Hazu left here with their clan members. The white-haired man raised his chin to his men. "Take them away first, and then deal with them after the third generation's order." The two Anbu set up the Kumo ninja. One of the Anbu looked down at the ice chips at his feet and glanced at the white-haired man hesitantly. "Captain." That place was the place where Bai Mingyu wielded his sword. There was still a piece of frost on the ground that had not completely melted away, reflecting a bright silvery color under the moonlight. "Ah, I see," the white-haired man responded lazily, turned his head, and looked at the direction Bai Mingyu left with his eye without an eye patch, his expression thoughtful. A ninjutsu that can create ice to freeze the surrounding area is indeed an ice escape type of blood succession. It seems that it is necessary to report this matter to the Hokage-sama. Blood inheritance limits. Hokage building, Sarutobi Hiruzen's office. At this moment, the third Hokage was holding a cigarette butt in his mouth, dragging his chin with his hands, and listened to the report of his subordinates with a solemn expression. In front of him was a young ninja with silver white hair. He looked about 17 or 18 years old. His left eye was blocked by a forehead protector that was used as an eye patch, and only his right eye was exposed. He looked at the third Hokage quietly. What showed in his eyes was a look of indifference that looked down on life and death. Hitaki Kakashi. If Bai Mingyu were standing here, he would be able to recognize the identity of this white-haired ninja at a glance. He is the disciple of the fourth Hokage and the future copy ninja Kakashi. Now, Kakashi is still serving as the squad leader in the Anbu and as the right-hand man of the third Hokage. I already understand the general situation. So, this time the Kumoin village envoy visited Konoha, they really had ulterior motives. They were actually coveting the Hyuga clan's Byakugan. Fortunately, the situation was stopped in time. If this plan is really realized by them, the consequences may be disastrous. The third Hokage said solemnly, "Where is the captured Cloud Ninja now?" Kakashi replied, "He is temporarily detained in the Anbu cell. He is under control and will not let him escape easily." That's good. Now is the stage when our strength in Konoha is weak. We must not cause any trouble again. The third generation pondered for a moment, then changed the topic and said, "As for Asakawa Shiroha, Kakashi, I have to thank you for continuing to monitor him for a while. If you still don't find anything strange about him, let's lift the monitoring of him." Quote. Kakashi raised his eyebrows slightly. The third generation seemed to be explaining to him, but also seemed to be talking to himself. The Anbu sent to the country of grass have not returned yet, and the information passed back before did not mention that his parents have the ice escape blood succession limit. As far as I know, the only people with this kind of blood inheritance limit are the Minazuki clan of Kurigakure village, and this clan was massacred by the bloody policy of Kurigakure village a few years ago. Starting from the late period of the Third Ninja War, that is, 7 or 8 years ago, Kurigakure village began to isolate itself from the country and massacred all the major blood families in the country. Hence the name Blood Mist Lane. Several other countries among the 5 major countries have heard about this matter, but they do not know the specific details. And because the investigation in Kurigakure village is extremely strict, the Anbu sent by Konoha several times to probe for information either returned without success, or were discovered by the ninjas of Kurigakure village and dealt with in secret, and the information passed back was extremely limited. However, it is said that after the Minazuki clan was exterminated, a very small number of remaining clan members escaped and lived in anonymity ever since. It is not impossible for one of them to wander to the country of grass. In any case, ice release is a very rare blood successor. If this child can be successfully integrated into Konoha, over time, a new blood successor family may be born. By then, Konoha's power will become stronger, and the will of fire of the first generation of adults will be passed down again. The kidnapping of Hinata in Kumogakure did not cause much trouble in Konoha. On the one hand, Hinata was kidnapped by Kumo ninja, which is a shame for both the Hyuga clan and Konoha as a whole. Following the principle of not publicizing family scandals, Konoha will certainly not publicize its shortcomings. On the other hand, the peace talks between the country of fire and the country of thunder will continue, and it is impossible to directly break up and fight at this time. Therefore, both parties had a tacit understanding to restrain the ninjas in their own villages and block the news. No one deliberately publicized it. Except for some junin from each family, most ordinary people in Konoha did not even know that this incident had happened. As for how Kumogakure and Konoha argue with each other on the peace treaty, it is a headache for those high-level officials. Half a month passed in a flash. Shua, a sound of breaking wind sounded. In the woods, a flash of bright light passed by, and then, a piece of frost was seen swaying from the sword blade, condensing into a sharp ice cone in midair. It flew forward 3 or 4 meters before losing its strength and falling to the ground, smashing into a pile of fine ice chips. Sure enough, it still doesn't work. Bai Mingyu exhaled, lowered his arm, and put Shubaishui back into the scabbard. He originally wanted to try to develop Sota Shiryuki's ability using a method similar to ice release, but judging from the results, the power of the Zanpakuto is not that easy to control. Except for Sota Shiryuki's own Hatsumai Yubai, and his previous fight with Yunwen Shinobu was fighting, he accidentally used the ice palm. After spending a lot of thought, he still couldn't figure out other moves. Even simulating the ice escape ninjutsu that appeared in the original work is very difficult. After breathing for a while, Bai Mingyu used the tip of the knife to pick up the weight-bearing vest next to him, put it on his shoulders and walked back. Nothing is too much, especially training. Moreover, he already has some clues about how to control ice and snow. After digesting today's experience, he should be close to finding a way. Back to the door. Just as he was about to take out the key and open the door, a house next door had already opened the door, and Shanglu's little head poked out. "Brother Bai Yu is back. Come and have dinner after taking a shower. Mom and I are waiting for you." Understood. Bai Mingyu smiled, opened the door and entered the house. In just a few days, the Uzumaki mother and daughter had adapted to life in Konoha. Compared with the frightened days in the country of grass, the stable environment here in Konoha made the mother and daughter live very smoothly. Xiangling gradually became as lively as a child of this age should, and Bai Mingyu also began to get used to going there to eat every day. Life. After hurriedly rinsing, Bai Mingyu came to Xiangling's house. After eating, Uzumaki Mia refused his request to help clean up the dishes as usual. She quickly cleared the table and took the dishes to the kitchen to clean them. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. "Bai Yu, please open the door for Auntie," Uzumaki Mia shouted casually in the kitchen. Bai Mingyu had already pressed the door handle, opened the door to the outside, and saw several tall figures appearing outside the door. Grandpa, the third Hokage. The person who came was the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen. There were two people following next to her, one of whom had gray hair and was clearly an elderly woman. She was wearing ordinary linen clothes with the Senju clan emblem embroidered on her sleeves. The other person also had white hair, but looked very young, and wore a fox mask unique to Anbu. Uzumaki Mia quickly dried her hands, walked out of the kitchen, and stood in the living room with some restraint. It turns out to be the third generation. "I was cleaning things just now, and I neglected a few people. Come and sit inside." After dragging a few chairs and inviting Kaoru to make tea, Uzumaki Mia said apologetically, "I'm really sorry, I haven't bought a sofa at home yet. I hope you don't mind." "Haha, it doesn't matter. The compatriots in the village are like family to me. You don't have to feel too restricted." The third Hokage exchanged a few pleasantries before getting down to business. "It just so happens that Bai Yu and Xiangling are both here, which saves me the trouble of saying it twice. That's it, I'm going to let Bai Yu enter the ninja school in Konoha to study, and the procedures have been completed. Yes, here is your admission notice." With that said, Sandai pushed a notice onto the table, with the name Asakawa Shiroha clearly written on the title page. Xianglu is still young and is not suitable for enrolling at such an early age, but as a member of the Uzumaki tribe, she has huge potential hidden in her body, so I specially found an enlightenment teacher for her to teach Xianglu the basic chakra extraction method. In addition, the sealing techniques left by Mito-sama and Kushina will be gradually taught to her in the future depending on the situation. Momoka-sama is an old member of the Senju clan. Speaking of which, she also has some connections with your Uzumaki clan. She is an outstanding female ninja. I think you won't mind if she will teach you, Mio." As he said that, the third Hokage turned sideways, and several people looked at the white-haired old woman. "Of course I won't mind. The third generation of adults cares so much about our mother and daughter. It's too late for Xianglu and I to be happy." Mizu Uzumaki pushed Xiao Xianglin. "Xiangsu, call master quickly." Xiangling looked at the people opposite him with some evasive eyes, and timidly shouted, "Master, master. Don't be too polite." Senju Momo touched Xianglian's head with her dry hands, and a smile appeared on her old face. "When Kushina first arrived in Konoha, she was about the same age as you are now. I didn't expect that it would pass in the blink of an eye. After all these years, I really miss the time when I fought side by side with the Uzumaki clan." "How long ago did you fight alongside the Uzumaki clan? Isn't this old woman a member of the clan who survived the time of the first Hokage?" As soon as Bai Mingyu thought about it, he noticed that the third Hokage turned his attention to him, with a kind smile on his face. Asakawa Baiyu, I have another thing that I want to talk to you about your blood inheritance limit. Of. Half an hour later, Bai Mingyu and Uzumaki's mother and daughter sent Sandai and others to the door. After watching the figures of several Konoha bosses disappear on the street, Bai Mingyu turned around and said goodbye to Uzumaki Mio and returned to his home. It's funny to say that without even knowing it, Bai Mingyu had the blood inheritance limit of ice escape. And judging from the meaning of Sandame's words, it seems that he still doubts that he has any relationship with the Minazuki clan of Kurigakure village. When he first heard this, Bai Mingyu was stunned for a moment, but he quickly came to his senses. Yes, when he saved Hinata that day, he used Soda Shirayuki's ability to defeat the Kumo ninja. Although there were no witnesses at the time, without deliberately erasing the traces, as long as the Anbu were not freeloaders, they would definitely investigate and find out something. Besides, the defeated Kumo ninja had also seen his abilities. The third generation came here just to appease Bai Mingyu and told him not to reveal his ice escape ability casually. After all, things like blood succession limits are too envy-inducing. Before you have enough strength to protect yourself, rashly exposing yourself will only attract the covetousness of others. In this regard, the experiences of the Hyuga clan and the Uchiha clan are enough to illustrate the problem. The eyes of the two clans that were gouged out by the enemy village, Danzo and others in several ninja wars can all be put together to circle the Hokage building. Thankfully, the third generation old man reminded me. If the news reaches Danzo, there may be some trouble. Bai Mingyu was secretly afraid. As the biggest scapegoat in Konoha, Danzo is famous for his love of abducting boys. He often uses various methods of coercion and inducement to lure outstanding geniuses from various families to his roots for brainwashing education. Moreover, the brainwashing method is not very clever, far worse than Orochimaru, who is also good at this skill. Especially since Bai Mingyu is alone and does not have the support of a big family, if he is forcibly taken to the root by Danzo. He didn't want to live that kind of dark life. Taking Soba Shirayuki back into his system backpack, Bai Mingyu checked the time on the admission notice, then hurriedly washed up and went to bed. The next morning, as the bedside alarm clock buzzed, a lot of sunlight poured in from the window. Bai Mingyu had already finished washing, put on the weight-bearing vest as a habit, then opened the door and walked out. When the dazzling sunlight hit his face, he subconsciously reached out to cover his eyes and said to himself, I almost forgot, I have to go to ninja school today. Forget it, I'm used to wearing a weight-bearing vest anyway, even if I wear it to ninja school, there shouldn't be any problem. After arriving in Konoha, after nearly half a month of weight-bearing training, Bai Mingyu's body weight had increased to 20 kilograms. It is equivalent to hanging a 7 or 8-year-old child on your body. Even Bai Mingyu found this weight a bit difficult. After a few days of adapting, he could only run for a short time while carrying the weight. He had to take it off when practicing sword skills, otherwise he wouldn't even be able to swing 50 times. You will be exhausted. But today is the first day of going to the ninja school, so there won't be too intense activities. Bai Mingyu walked through the streets and came to Konoha Ninja School. After handing the admission notice to the gatekeeper ninja at the school gate, a Chunin teacher soon came out of the teaching building, came to Bai Mingyu, waved and said with a smile, Are you the child that the third generation talked about? Let me come, I am your class teacher, just call me Teacher Sangyuan. Teacher Sangyuan, Bai Mingyu shouted politely and followed the other person towards the teaching building. At the same time, he looked around curiously. The appearance of the ninja school is similar to the primary and secondary schools on Earth in the previous life, but the scale is smaller. After all, there are only hundreds of children in each class who successfully enter the school. More than half of them were ninja trainees from various families in Konoha, while the rest were from civilian backgrounds. Although among civilian ninjas there have been extremely outstanding geniuses like Minato Namikaze, most of them ended up disappearing into obscurity. Even if they pass the graduation exam, they can only be a genin for the rest of their lives, and those who can successfully grow to junin there were very few people. But even so, ninja school is also an opportunity for children from civilian families. Doing ninja missions can make more money than going home and farming. And which child living in the world of Naruto doesn't want to become a ninja, or even the most powerful, Shadow? It's here. Arriving at a classroom, teacher Sengyuan stopped, pushed open the door, and led Bai Mingyu onto the podium. Everyone be quiet. Dozens of pairs of eyes in the classroom looked over. Starting today, a new student will join our class. Welcome. Teacher Sengyuan took the lead and clapped a few times, then turned to Bai Mingyu and said, Asakawa, please introduce yourself. Hello everyone, my name is Shiroha Asakawa. This is my first time meeting you. Please give me your advice in the future. A simple opening statement. The children in the classroom couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. They clapped sparsely and murmured. Asakawa Hakua, have you heard of this surname before? It seems that there is no such family in Konoha. Maybe he doesn't come from a big family, but this boy is handsome and looks very cute. It's pretty good, but it's a pity it's not my cup of tea. Quote. The discussions of these children thought that others could not hear them, but the two people on the podium were not ordinary people. Teacher Sengyuan was a chunin, and although Bai Mingyu did not activate the half-animal state, his ears were quite keen, and he could hear these children's evaluation of themselves suddenly made them dumbfounded. As expected, all the children in the Naruto world are extremely precocious, otherwise Naruto would not have had the feat of developing excellent seduction techniques before he was 12 years old. Okay, classmate Bai Yu, please go and sit in the empty seat in the 4th row on the right. You must get along well with your classmates in the future. Bai Mingyu came to an empty seat and sat down, looking around. It happened that a black-haired girl at the same table also looked up. The two sets of eyes met, and the black-haired girl smiled and waved. Hello, classmate Bai Yu, my name is Uchiha Izumi, and I will be your deskmate from now on. Please give me your advice. Please advise. Bai Mingyu's eyes moved and he noticed the table tennis racket printed on the back of the girl's clothes. It was not the round fan symbol, and he immediately understood in his heart. A member of the Uchiha clan. And the name Uchiha Izumi still sounds familiar. Bai Mingyu stared at the black-haired girl for a while, not remembering where he had heard her name before. It wasn't until he heard several boys sitting next to him talking in low voices during class that he suddenly realized it. Have you heard? That weasel has already started to leave the village to perform tasks. What, is he the genius of the Uchiha clan who graduated from our class last year? He seems to be only 8 years old now. Why is there such a big gap between people? Hey, he is from the Uchiha clan. Who doesn't know that the Sharingan of the Uchiha clan is a very powerful blood successor? He should have gained that ability by now. Ferret. Bai Mingyu's heart trembled when he heard this name. Thinking about it, no wonder he always felt that Uchiha Izumi looked familiar. Isn't this girl the girlfriend of Itachi in the original work? Of course, my girlfriend's statement is watery. In the original work, Izumi is one of the few friends that Itachi can talk to in the entire Uchiha clan, except for Shisui. He is also one of the few Mangekyo Sharingan eye-openers in the Uchiha clan. It's a pity that before the ability of Mangekyo could be developed, he died tragically at the hands of Obito and Itachi along with other clan members on the night of genocide. Now, the 8-year-old Izumi Uchiha is only a 3rd-year student in the ninja school. Although he has not yet opened the Sharingan, his grades are among the best in the school due to his excellent bloodline from the Uchiha clan. Although he is not comparable to Itachi, who is a 7-year-old genin and a 10-year-old chunin, he is already considered a genius compared to ordinary people. Has Itachi graduated early? It's a pity. I originally wanted to compete with him. Bai Mingyu will definitely not be able to beat Weasel, who has activated the kaleidoscope. He can be killed in 1 month. But now Itachi is just a young genius who has just become a genin. With Soda Shirayuki's ability, he may not lose to the Sharingan. The morning passed quickly. The things taught in the ninja school are very complicated, not only training in kunai, shuriken, and basic ninjutsu, but cultural classes are also an important part, and their nature is similar to the natural sciences on Earth. It's just that because of the average technological level of the Naruto world and the fact that ninjas themselves don't require too advanced theoretical knowledge, the level of involvement is not very deep. It is still a bit difficult for children of this age. But Bai Mingyu has experienced higher education on Earth for more than 10 years, and it is natural to learn something at the level of elementary school science class. Assuming that the ratio of the distance between the ninja Benimaru and the center of Konoha village and the distance between him and the Nanga river is 1, 2, find the equation of Benimaru's trajectory. The oxidation-reduction reaction equation at the moment of explosion of the detonating symbol is as follows, please balance it. It takes 20 minutes for a ninja to refine chakra to full, and 30 minutes to release all the chakra. How long does it take for a ninja to refine and release chakra at the same time? What the hell are these topics? When he saw these words, Bai Mingyu almost broke the pencil in his hand. This kind of question is indeed given to a group of children with an average age of 8 or 9 years old. It seems that Sakura, who was able to independently prepare the written test paper for Naruto's Chunin exam a few years later, is indeed a true academic master. The get out of class bell rang again. The Chunin teacher on the podium finished his lecture, packed up his things and left the classroom. After resting for a while, the students each took out their lunch boxes from their school bags. The ninja school is not allowed to go out at noon, and the students have lunch at the school every day. However, Bai Mingyu didn't know this rule on his first day of school. He was a little confused when he saw the students around him starting to eat. Bai Yu-san, didn't you bring a lunch box to school? A girl's voice. Looking back, she met Uchiha Izumi's black eyes. The girl was still holding a paper bag in her hand. She looked at Bai Mingyu, took out 2 rice balls from it and handed them over. Well, I have some extra rice balls here. I can't finish the meal by myself. If Bai Yu doesn't mind, please help me with it. Forehead. Look at this person's emotional intelligence, he can give out every favor without leakage. Bai Mingyu hesitated for a moment, took the thing from Izumi Uchiha's hand, and said thank you, I'll treat you to something to eat next time. It doesn't matter, we are all classmates, so we should help each other. Uchiha Izumi smiled, seemed to have remembered something, and asked, by the way, did Bai Yu-kun grow up in Konoha village? I seem to have never seen you before. Oh, I came from another village. Is the outer village a place outside Konoha? I have never been there before. I really hope I can go out and see the outside world. There will be chances in the future. Children of this age are far from scheming and have very simple ideas. After lunch, Bai Mingyu and Uchiha Izumi became quite familiar. Soon it will be afternoon. Bang bang. 1, 2, and 3 are all 10 rings. A total of 10 shurikens were thrown out in just a few seconds, hitting the bullseye 50 meters away with unusual accuracy, which naturally attracted a burst of cheers. After finishing all this, the young man put his hands in his pockets, looked around with his white pupils, and then walked aside proudly. Hyuga fertile land. Among each batch of ninja students, there will always be 1 or 2 dazzling geniuses, and Hyuga Ryota is the first overall scorer in this batch. Whether it is Kunai, Shuriken, 3 body skills, or various written tests, he ranked among the best in all course examinations, and as the young master of the Hyuga branch family, he was quite popular in the class. Seeing the girls in the class cheering for Hinata Ryota, several boys couldn't hold back, and they were all eager to try and shine with their own performance. Uchiha Izumi turned around and said to Bai Mingyu with some worry, Bai Yu-kun, do you want to tell Mr. Sengyuan that you will train with us next time? Without special practice, you may not even be able to hit the target. Don't worry, my shuriken throwing skills are at level 6. Bai Mingyu smiled, took the shuriken picked up by the previous student, and stood in front of the drawn white line. Look, that transfer student is going to throw a shuriken. I don't know what his level is, but he is definitely not as perverted as Hinata Ryota. After all, I am a transfer student. Maybe I have never touched shuriken before. Many students looked over curiously, casting their gazes on Bai Mingyu. Feeling the sights coming from all directions, Bai Mingyu slowly exhaled, then looked up at the target, looking at it motionlessly for a few seconds, and then suddenly raised his hand. Shoo! In the sound of breaking through the air, 2 shurikens flew out from both hands. But then, Bai Mingyu raised his hand again, and there were still 2 shurikens, but these 2 shurikens were extremely fast. The second one caught up with the first 2 shurikens and collided with each other. Along with a string of fire, several shurikens suddenly accelerated, and only 4 bangs, and bangs were heard, almost connected together, and they hit the bullseye in no particular order. Cool, a boy whistled. The hand that Bai Mingyu inadvertently revealed was even more eye-catching than Hinata Ryota just now. After all, there were many students in the class who could hit the target with shurikens, but there were only a few who could do so many tricks. Even Hinata Ryota frowned and looked over in surprise. Bang bang. There was another string of thin sounds. This time Bai Mingyu did not show off any fancy skills, but honestly threw out the remaining shurikens, scattered them randomly around the bullseye. In fact, he really wanted to show off the Uchiha Itachi's shuriken technique, and show off in front of these little brats who had never seen the world, but the LV6 shuriken throwing technique was still a bit difficult to do. It is estimated that Uchiha Itachi's shuriken throwing technique has reached level 7 or above. Coupled with the sharp insight of the Sharingan, it even achieves the effect of elusiveness. Asakawa Hakuya is qualified. Teacher Sangyuan was also startled for a moment, came to his senses, wrote down everyone's scores in the scorebook, then closed the book and clapped his hands. Okay, now everyone has finished the test. The shuriken training is over. Next is the actual combat training. Everyone works in pairs and competes separately. I will score according to your performance. Hearing this, all the students dispersed to look for their training opponents. It can be seen that this is not the first time for these children to engage in actual combat training. After just half a minute, most of them have already found their opponents. Uchiha Izumi had already found an opponent. He turned around and saw Bai Mingyu. He hesitated for a moment, said a few words to the girl next to him, and walked over quickly. Baiyu-kun, haven't you found an opponent for training yet? If not, if you don't like it, I'll spar with you. Asakawa Hakuya-san, I am Hyuga Ryota from the Hyuga clan. Please give me your advice. Before he finished speaking, a voice interrupted. Hinata Ryota walked up to Bai Mingyu first, looking at him with a pair of white pupils. Bai Mingyu looked at Uchiha Izumi, then at Hinata Ryota, smiled at the girl, and then turned to face Hinata Ryota. Okay, but before the competition, are there any rules that I want to explain in advance? Hinata Ryota shook his head. As promised beforehand, I am a member of the Hyuga clan. Our clan's Byakugan can discern the actions and movements of our opponents. You'd better be careful later. In the field, Bai Mingyu and Hinata Ryota stood more than 10 meters apart, forming a seal of opposition to each other. Hinata Ryota mentioned chakra, veins appeared around his eyes, and his pupils turned completely white. Byakugan. The Byakugan, one of the 3 major pupil techniques, is different from the Sharingan. Compared with the Sharingan, which is difficult to open, the Hyuga clan's Byakugan is almost as good as a pair of hands. There is no threshold at all. As long as they are old enough, they can basically open their eyes smoothly. At the same time, although it cannot continue to evolve like the Sharingan, the Byakugan has extremely strong reconnaissance and assistance capabilities. It has an almost 360 degrees viewing angle with no blind spots, a 1 kilometer radius of vision, and the ability to see through the human body. It can be used in wars. Amazing effect. The soft fist used with the cooperation of Byakugan is the unique secret technique of the Hyuga clan. It was by relying on these 2 secret skills that the Hyuga clan became one of the great families in Konoha, on par with the powerful Uchiha clan. Facing such an opponent, Bai Mingyu did not dare to take it lightly. Although the Byakugan is not as difficult to open as the Sharingan, but if you can open it while still in ninja school, you are really a genius. Please advise. Staring at each other for a few seconds, suddenly, Hinata Ryota kicked the ground with his feet and jumped out quickly. He rushed towards Bai Mingyu while raising his hand and stabbing with several shurikens. Several shurikens flew out of Bai Mingyu's hand, colliding with sparks in midair. The first round is considered a trial. The next moment, Hyuga Ryota had arrived in front of him, with his right palm spread out, and he waved out with all his strength. Pong! In a hurry, Bai Mingyu blocked it with his arms and felt a slightly strong force falling in front of him. He took a few steps back to get rid of the subsequent impact. However, Hyuga Ryota was unyielding when he gained the upper hand. He rushed in hot pursuit and kept waving his palms out. Bagua 2 palms. Papapa. The sounds of fists and feet continued to sound. Because it was just an ordinary training, Bai Mingyu had no intention of using the Lion King, let alone the Zanpakuto. He just relied on pure taijutsu to fight Hyuga Ryota. Fortunately, although Hinata Ryota is a genius, he is still a child under 10 years old after all. He has only practiced 8 of the 64 Bagua palms, and he was at a stalemate for a while. But even so, the battle between the two was obviously much more intense than that of the surrounding students, and they quickly attracted a lot of attention. Who is over there, fighting so fiercely? One of the parties is Hyuga Ryota, and there is actually someone in our class who can fight evenly with him. It should be just a test, and I haven't used my full strength yet. Otherwise, once Hinata Ryota becomes serious, even Uchiha Izumi will not be his opponent. During the discussion, Hinata Ryota frowned and stared at Bai Mingyu with a pair of white eyes. I didn't expect that your strength has reached this level. It's really surprising. Then I have to take it seriously. I can't ask for it. As this sound fell, Hinata Ryota suddenly put his hands together and quickly formed a series of hand seals, clone technique. With a bang, in the smoke, Hinata Ryota's figure suddenly split into two people. They quickly cut towards Bai Mingyu from both wings, and threw a dozen shurikens in succession while running, intertwining into a net of hidden weapons, coming from all directions. Coming fast. It's a ninjutsu. It turns out that the Hyuga clan also uses techniques other than soft fist. Bai Mingyu was shocked when he saw Hyuga Ryota's clone technique, but then he thought about it. Even Kai can use basic ninjutsu and psychic techniques. It's not uncommon for the Hyuga clan to use several ninjutsu. There are very few examples like Shaoli who don't know how to use any ninjutsu except taijutsu. Seeing the shurikens intertwining, Bai Mingyu turned his palms, blowing fire palm. Pong. Strong wind surged out from the palm of his hand, and there was only a crisp ping-ping-pong-pong sound. Not only did it scatter the shurikens fired from the front, it also knocked Hinata Ryota's clone away, exploding into smoke in midair. This is. Hinata Ryota's pupils shrank slightly. Others may not be able to see clearly, but with his Byakugan, he can clearly see that when Bai Mingyu blows the fire palm, there is no sign of the chakra in his body fluctuating. This incredible phenomenon shocked him for a moment. What kind of ninjutsu is this? Question marks popped up in his head. Without stopping, Hyuga Ryota jumped up and slapped Bai Mingyu with a palm. Empty 8 diagrams. Shuriken tactics are ineffective and can only be used in close combat. Hyuga Ryota has absolute confidence in his family's soft boxing method. However, 6-type iron block, Bai Mingyu shouted low, and a layer of steel-like color suddenly appeared on his shoulders, which offset most of the impact of Bagua Kongzong. Then he grabbed Hinata Ryota's wrist with his bare hands. In the latter's stunned eyes, 2 fingers seemed to he pinched his wrist like an iron pincer and then threw him back. Suddenly, Bai Mingyu's wrist trembled slightly, and Hinata Ryota felt the strength on his wrist loosen. Without any time to think, he stood up and kicked out, knocking Bai Mingyu back a few steps and almost falling to the ground. There will be more fertile fields in Hyuga. Bai Mingyu suddenly opened his palms and made a stop gesture. No need to compete anymore, I admit defeat. Admit defeat. What a joke. Others may not know it, but Hinata Ryota knew in his heart that in the few minutes of the fight, the two were basically evenly matched, and Bai Mingyu even had a slight upper hand. Although he was confident that he would win in the end, Bai Mingyu's resignation so simply made Hinata Ryota unable to accept it. Ignoring the confused Hyuga Ryota, Bai Mingyu staggered down the field and sat down in a corner of the playground. First, he took off his coat, took off his weight-bearing vest and threw it aside, then put the sweaty coat back on his body. The admission of defeat just now seemed abrupt, but in fact it was out of necessity. Fighting with a 20-kilogram weight-bearing vest created a greater burden than he expected. In such a short period of time, Bai Mingyu had already fallen into a state of physical exhaustion. There was no problem in holding on and fighting, but in the end, even if he defeated Hinata Ryota, he himself would probably collapse. In the middle of the field, Hinata Ryota finally came to his senses, took a deep look at Bai Mingyu, and walked off the stage. Several boys quickly ran up to compliment him. No matter how the process went, in their opinion, Hyuga Ryota once again maintained a record of unbeatable victory and deserved the title of number 1 in the class. Only Uchiha Izumi came over with some worry and said to Bai Mingyu, "Baiyu-kun, are you okay? Hyuga Ryota is our number 1 in this period. After Itachi-kun graduated early, almost no one can beat him. You just transferred to our class, even if you lose to him, it is not a shame." As Uchiha Kwan said, he sat down next to Bai Mingyu and pushed the weight vest aside. Zai Tui. After failing to push it twice, Izumi Uchiha finally noticed the weight-bearing vest. He looked down at it for a while, then grabbed the 2 ends of the vest with both hands and slowly lifted it up. "Hey, why is it so heavy?" You stuffed it inside this piece of clothing. Iron block. Quote quote. Before Bai Mingyu could answer, Izumi Uchiha had turned over his vest, shook it a few times, and poured out a few black iron blocks. When they fell to the ground, a burst of dust was raised, and a piece a few centimeters deep was smashed out of depression. It's really stuffed with iron. Just now, you were wearing these clothes full of iron and fighting against Hyuga Ryota. Uchiha Izumi opened his mouth into an O shape and looked at Bai Mingyu with surprise. Wearing such heavy clothes, it would be difficult for ordinary students to even walk, but he could actually fight with Hyuga Ryota for such a long time. Then if he took off the weight-bearing vest from the beginning, wouldn't it become a one-sided situation, and even Hyuga Ryota would not be his opponent? Thinking of this, Uchiha Izumi secretly glanced at the Hyuga farmland in the distance, and felt a wave of panic in his heart. Your partner is still waiting for you. Come over quickly. The actual training for everyone else is almost over. Bai Mingyu calmly took back the weight-bearing vest from Uchiha Izumi and raised his chin towards the middle of the playground. The girl in the same group as Uchiha Izumi was still standing there waiting for her to go back. Quote quote. Uchiha Izumi opened his mouth, but finally stopped asking any more questions. This little episode passed quickly. The first day of ninja school ended uneventfully. As the school bell rang, the students left the school one after another. After Bai Mingyu walked out of school, he did not go home immediately. Instead, he walked to the woods outside the village as usual. Daily practice has become compulsory. However, after walking a few steps, he suddenly stopped at a fork in the road. This is, in his mind, on the map that included the entire Konoha village, a dark green light spot suddenly appeared, emitting a faint halo. Bronze treasure chest. During the period after entering Konoha, the treasure chest system was refreshed several times. The treasure chests that were refreshed were either outside Konoha village or ordinary black iron treasure chests, and most of the items that were opened were ordinary ninja tools. It seemed that day the silver treasure chest that opened Soda Shirayuki was just a flash in the pan. Of course, it's also possible that Soda Shirayuki used up all his luck, so he gained nothing in the next period of time. But now, the long-lost bronze treasure chest appears on the map. Just the place where the treasure chest appears. That place, could it be Nanhi River? Bai Mingyu raised his head and looked across the countless overlapping buildings to the outskirts of Konoha village in the distance. Nanga River is the original birthplace of Konoha. It was here that the first Hokage Senju Hashirama and his good friend Madara Uchiha got acquainted, and then had a decades-long entanglement. The two worked together to create a powerful Konoha. And now, that's where the Uchiha clan resides. Since the end of the Nine Tails incident 3 years ago, the Uchiha clan has been driven from the center of the village to the fringes by Konoha's senior officials, and the meaning of rejection is extremely obvious. In this regard, although there are different voices within the Uchiha clan, after 3 years of adaptation, they have gradually established a foothold in the Nanga River area, and their contact with the outside world has become less and less. There are almost no outsiders living in the settlement. All systems are determined internally by the Uchiha clan, and some even run counter to the policies formulated by Konoha's top leaders. In addition, the system of intermarriage within the clan is carried out in order to maintain the bloodline. All these have made the gap between the Uchiha clan and other big families in Konoha increasingly obvious. Closer to home, Bai Mingyu didn't have to worry about the future of the Uchiha clan. But the bronze treasure chest was refreshed in Nanhi River, and whether to go or not became a question. After all, it is the 52nd year of Konoha, and there are still nearly 4 years until Uchiha Itachi's action of annihilating an entire clan. The current Uchiha clan is undoubtedly the most popular family in Konoha, and they are in charge of Konoha. The security force, as well as Uchiha Fugaku, a group of elite ninjas who have experienced several wars, are also present. In addition, during the Third Ninja World War, the genius Uchi, who became famous for his teleportation technique on the Kurigakure battlefield and possesses the Mangekyo Sharingan, waved Shisui. In comparison, the Hyuga clan could only stand aside. In this case, sneaking into Nanhi River is a very risky thing in itself. If he is discovered, the outcome may not be too good. It would be as minor as being invited to the Konoha security building for tea. On the other hand, if he is characterized as a suspicious person who stole confidential information, he may be killed on the spot like the Kumo ninja who sneaked into the Hyuga clan's residence in the original work. The difficulty of opening this treasure chest seems to be about the same as stealing the sealed book. Bai Mingyu squinted his eyes and felt a little headache. Bronze-level treasure chests are rare, so you definitely won't be willing to give up directly, but you must at least find a way to try. But how to sneak in without anyone noticing requires careful planning. It's about to happen. The training grounds of Konoha Ninja School. With a scream, the black-haired girl suddenly stepped on the ground. Her seemingly petite body jumped out like an arrow. In an instant, she crossed a distance of more than 10 meters and came to Bai Mingyu. He drew back his right fist and then swung it out with all his strength. The small fist contains extremely heavy power. Snapped. The next moment, fists and palms collided. Bai Mingyu reached out to hold the girl's fist, and threw it hard in the opposite direction. The latter twisted her waist in midair, barely stabilized her body, and then rushed forward again. While the person was still on the way, kunai stabbed him quickly. Bai Mingyu also took out the kunai from his waist, and then saw a series of ping-pong fire splashing everywhere. In just a few seconds, the two kunai had collided 10 times. Suddenly, Bai Mingyu flipped his wrist, raised his backhand, and passed a soft force along the kunai. Unprepared, the kunai flew away from the girl's hand, with a trace of panic on her face. The next moment, a dark light flashed. The kunai stopped its force a second before it touched the girl's neck, moved it lightly to the side, and finally retracted it to her waist. Ended. Uchiha Izumi pursed her lips tightly, with a stubborn look on her face. After a moment of silence, she nodded slowly and said, "Okay, I lost this time. It is still a practical training organized by the ninja school. It's just that this time Bai Mingyu's opponent is no longer Hinata Ryota, but Uchiha Izumi. Uchiha Izumi, who has not opened the Sharingan, has good combat effectiveness compared to other students due to her excellent bloodline and the Uchiha clan's superb shuriken skills. However, for Bai Mingyu, it is only a slight improvement. He brings a little bit of pressure. Even if you fight while wearing a weight vest, you can win easily." But Uchiha Izumi felt very uncomfortable. Although she is a girl and not very competitive, she is still an Uchiha after all and bears the pride of her family. If she had lost to Bai Mingyu under normal circumstances, she wouldn't have said anything. However, the opponent competed with her while carrying a weight of 20 kilograms, and she still lost. This result was a bit difficult for her to accept. Don't be too frustrated. In fact, when I was in the country of grass, I learned some basic ninjutsu from the ninjas in the village. Otherwise, I really wouldn't be your opponent. Bai Mingyu's comfort had no effect. After a while, Uchiha Izumi breathed out, and the depressed look on his face gradually faded. "Well, I lost to you because my skills are inferior to others, but Baiyu-kun, I will definitely practice hard and continue to challenge you." Challenging. Anytime. The two of them leaned against the wall next to the playground and rested for a while. Bai Mingyu said casually, "By the way, Quan, I heard that Konoha village is passed through by a very long river. Is it true?" "Of course you are saying that the Nanga River is true. The Nanga River not only passes through Konoha, but its source area is also where our Uchiha clan is based." "Oh, we moved there 2 or 3 years ago." At this point, Uchiha Izumi's expression froze, as if he was talking about some taboo topic. He opened his mouth and changed the subject. "I have been living there since then. The water of Nanga River is very clear. Sometimes I am not in a good mood. When I feel good, I sit by the river, and the unhappiness in my heart is instantly washed away. Really, after hearing what you said, I suddenly want to go and see it." "Well, yes, but that area is inhabited by our Uchiha clan. It may be inconvenient for outsiders to enter, and some places are not allowed to be entered casually. If you really want to see it, Mr. Baiyu, I can give it to you. You be the guide." Bai Mingyu frowned slightly. Although Uchiha Izumi said it easily, some clues could still be seen from her hesitant expression just now. Has the relationship between the Uchiha clan and other clans in Konoha become so tense? Infiltration has become more difficult. Next, Bai Mingyu got some information from Uchiha Izumi about the current situation of Nanga River and the Uchiha clan, as well as the situation of Konoha's security forces. These are not secrets. Most of the villagers who have stayed in Konoha village for a long time know something about it. Uchiha Izumi did not become suspicious. He just thought that Bai Mingyu had just arrived in Konoha village and was curious about the village. He knew about it. I picked out some important points about the situation. The prototype of a plan gradually sketched out in Bai Mingyu's mind. That night. It's late at night, when everything is silent. On the deserted streets of Konoha, along with a small voice, a black figure scurried past like a cat, disappearing into the darkness in the corner. Bai Mingyu. In order to ensure nothing goes wrong, for tonight's action, he not only put on a black night suit and a scarf on his face, but also entered a semi-animal state from the beginning. Cats are naturally nocturnal animals. In this kind of situation, in this state, Bai Mingyu's mobility was greatly improved. Without disturbing anyone, he quietly passed through half of Konoha and arrived at the outskirts of the Uchiha clan's residence. He quietly hid behind a house and peered towards the Konoha security building on one side of the street. There was a faint yellow light shining through the windows of the security building, and voices could be vaguely heard inside. After a while, several Uchihas wearing green ninja vests walked out of the building and walked to the street on one side. The Konoha security force has 2 changing of guard times every night. This news was obtained from Uchiha Izumi. Bai Mingyu didn't need too long. As long as he had half a minute and rushed over with a single breath, he could sneak into the Uchiha clan's residence without anyone noticing. Although the Sharingan of the Uchiha clan is powerful, after all, it does not have the insight and clairvoyance ability like the Byakugan. As long as you don't encounter them head-on, the chance of being discovered is actually not high. Isn't there anyone out on patrol? Let's infiltrate now. Bai Mingyu took a deep breath, scurried across the street like a cat, and rolled silently into the shadow of the opposite wall. What? In the Konoha security building, an Uchiha ninja who was sitting by the window and drinking tea seemed to notice something. He suddenly raised his head and looked out the window, and saw the dark night. What's wrong, brother Lai? Nothing, I just saw a shadow passing by, maybe it was a passing wild cat. The tribesman named Uchiha Retsu shook his head and slowly looked back. He glanced at the other people who were eating and drinking together, and snorted dissatisfied. You guys are so lazy when performing tasks. What should you do if you encounter an emergency? Hey, who is so ignorant that he dares to break into the residence of our Uchiha clan? You can't say that. A few days ago, people from Union Village broke into the Hyuga clan's residence and kidnapped the daughter of the Hyuga clan leader. Although the strength of the Hyuga clan cannot be compared with ours, there is no guarantee that there will be no outsiders. Spies are targeting us. That's right, let's finish eating quickly and go out on patrol. Bai Mingyu's figure flew past the wall. At this time, most of the Uchiha clan members had fallen asleep, and the entire station was plunged into darkness. Only a few windows could still see the dancing lights. It may be that the Uchiha clan has been the largest clan in Konoha for too long, and they never expected that anyone would try to take advantage of them. The defense at the station was not as tight as expected, but rather lax. Smoother than expected, Bai Mingyu quickly passed through a densely populated residential area. We came to a relatively open place. Not far ahead is a jungle with dense tree shadows. From here, you can faintly hear the sound of rushing water coming from far away. You can see a wide river flowing through the center of the camp in the distance. When it reaches a distant place, it roars again. It fell with a deafening roar. It's a waterfall on the Nanga River side. The goal is very close. Under the cover of the woods, Bai Mingyu ran wildly. A few minutes later, he discovered a faint green light emanating from the shallow water near the river not far away, as if something was stuck in the mud. The bronze treasure chest marked on the map is only a dozen steps away from his current location. Found it. Bai Mingyu curled his lips, came to the river, and plunged into the river. The current of the Nanhe River was more turbulent than expected. Fortunately, Bai Mingyu's body had no other abilities, but the water quality was pretty good. He pushed his legs hard and swam down like a fish. Soon he came to the place where the treasure chest fell. He groped for both sides of the treasure box with both hands, preparing to lift the lid. Just then, a black shadow suddenly flashed across the river, and a faint voice was vaguely heard. Somebody is coming. The action of opening the box paused. Bai Mingyu's eyes narrowed slightly, and he raised his head and looked up at the sky. The light in the river was very dim, and the surroundings were dark. It was difficult to see clearly even 3 to 5 meters away, but due to the moonlight on the water, visibility was pretty good. Soon, a second figure was seen chasing up from the other side of the river. The figure in front suddenly stopped, his feet seemed to be stepping on the water out of thin air, and he looked back at the person. Art fire escape ho fireball. Water escape water array. The battle broke out in an instant. The figure in front formed a series of dazzling handprints with his hands, opened his mouth, and spit out a huge ball of fire, turning half of the river into a crimson red. The people behind him responded calmly with water release ninjutsu. Waves of water rose up from the water of Nanga River, forming a wall of water to block the oncoming flames. But then, several black shadows flew out of the fireball, which turned out to be black kunai wrapped in flames. Amity claw red. A string of tinkling sounds. The person behind drew a long knife from behind, swung the blade, and deflected all the kunai with fire attacks. Then, the long knife slashed with the force, sending the remaining kunai flying backwards. At the same time, several kunai flew out silently from behind the fireball. The two collided in midair, ping 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 pong. After a soft sound, they fell into the river one after another. Itachi, you performed well, but if it's just this level, you're no match for me. Quote quote. A brief silence. Suddenly, the water under the person speaking behind suddenly broke open, and a wet figure rushed up from underneath, grabbing the legs of the person behind like a water ghost, and pulled the former down hard and immediately sank into the river. When he came down, he opened his mouth and drank a few mouthfuls of river water into his stomach. He was speechless. Just when the attacker thought he had succeeded, he only heard a bang. Substitution. The drowning man suddenly turned into a log, and then there was another sound of water. The figure of an 8 or 9-year-old black-haired boy cut through the water as neatly as a white blade, and appeared above the Nanga River, standing with chakra condensed on his feet. On the surface of the water, he held a kunai in his hand and looked around with a vigilant expression. At this moment, a dark cloud drifted away from the moon. With that meager light, the face of the black-haired boy was revealed. He has black hair, black eyes, a neat ponytail, and 2 less obvious nasolabial folds on his expressionless face. The Uchiha clan emblem, which looks like a table tennis card, is printed on the back of the clothes. Itachi Uchiha, who is only 8 years old. Thump. Itachi's expression changed, his eyes followed the sound, and he noticed somewhere near the river bank that a black figure emerged from the water and was swimming quickly towards the river bank. Is it Shisui? Kunai thrown. Itachi himself followed closely, walking on the water, passing over 10 meters of the river in an instant, and the highly compressed fire attribute chakra from his mouth was about to spray out. In an instant, Itachi seemed to realize something, his pupils shrank, and the ninjutsu he was about to release turned into a cold questioning, "Who are you?" Baimingyu felt that he was quite unlucky. Against all odds, I managed to avoid the patrols of Konoha's security forces and sneaked into the Minamiga River, which is located in the hinterland of the Uchiha clan's headquarters. Even the treasure chest had been opened. Unexpectedly, I met the Uchiha clan who were conducting actual combat exercises here, tribesmen. It would be fine if they were just ordinary tribesmen, but these two people are still the famous Itachi God and Shisui. There was no time to complain about these two unlucky children why they didn't go home so late and were still wandering around outside. What lay before Baimingyu was a more serious problem. What should I do to escape from under the noses of these two Uchihas? Putting aside the god of Itachi, Uchiha Itachi at this time had just graduated from the ninja school for a year and had not really grown up. His Sharingan was probably not even open to the 3 Magatama, and he was far from the cage-level person with superior strength and IQ in later generations. Strong. One-on-one, although Baimingyu was not sure, he was not afraid of him. But Uchiha Shisui, that is the Mangekyo Sharingan, the owner of the most powerful genjutsu, Betami. He is also the top powerhouse of the Uchiha clan and even the entire Konoha village. His strength is at least close to cage level. It's not good to meet anyone, but I met him. Facing Itachi's question, Baimingyu suddenly accelerated and jumped up from the water. Just when Itachi subconsciously slowed down, thinking that he was about to take action, Baimingyu suddenly stepped hard on the river. With a figure like a ghost, Itachi felt his eyes blurred, and the next moment, he saw the figure in his sight appearing on the other side. Teleportation. Bai Mingyu, who had fled to the shore, had no intention of looking back. As soon as his feet touched the ground, he ran quickly towards the woods near Nanga River. He did not want to risk his own life to test the strength of Itachi and Shisui. See if these two people will kill themselves. However, before running a few steps, I heard a hissing sound. As soon as the light in front of him dimmed, a figure suddenly appeared in the middle of the road, blocking Bai Mingyu's escape route. Do you want to escape? I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.